Islam, peace, love, and prosperity to all of humanity on planet Earth. Midgard, we're back with another session, Sunday session, treaty class session, finishing up the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. We last left off at Article 45. We'll pick up from there. Without any further ado, let's get straight to it. So it states, Article 45, loss of a right to invoke a ground for invalidating, terminating, withdrawing from, or suspending the operation of a treaty. Who did that in 1956? Can anyone remember? In 1956, states agreed to suspend the treaty. I'll give you a hint. Go ahead, Brother Shin. You got your hands? You got your hands up, Brother Shin? Well, I'll give you all a clue.
I think it's France.
France with who?
With Morocco, with the Sultan.
That's exactly right, brother. The Treaty of Fez, Protectorate, that was suspended in 1956 when the Sultan became the king of, or reduced himself to become a king of the new modern state of the Kingdom of Morocco. So we saw that in operation. So it says, a state may no longer invoke a ground for invalidating, terminating, withdrawing from, or suspending the operation of a treaty under Article 46 to 50 or Articles 60 and 62 if, after becoming aware of the facts. All right. And keep in mind, I'm not sure if we'll be able to finish this one today. It's a pretty long treaty. It's like 71 articles. We'll try to push it to the limit and see if we can. If not, we'll resume the next week. So it says, A, it shall have expressly agreed that the treaty is valid or remains in force or continues in operation as the case may be. Or B, it must by reason of its conduct be considered as having acquiesced in the validity of the treaty or in its maintenance in force or in operation as the case may be. Read that again. It must by reason of its conduct be considered as having acquiesced in the validity of the treaty or in its maintenance in force or in operation as the case may be. Invalidity of treaties, that's section 2. So what's the invalidities of treaties? Article 46. Provisions or provisios, instructions of internal law regarding competence to conclude treaties. 1. A state may not invoke the fact that its consent to be bound by a treaty has been expressed in violation of a provision of its internal law regarding competence to conclude treaties as invalidating its consent, unless that violation was manifest and concerned a rule of its internal law of fundamental importance. So it deals with your internal law. What does your internal law say? Right? A state may not invoke the fact that its consent to be bound by a treaty has been expressed in violation of a provision of its internal law. So your internal law cannot violate the actual treaty itself. 2, a violation is manifest if it would be objectively evident to any state conducting itself in the matter in accordance with normal practice and in good faith. In good faith, it's like pacta sunt servanda. Agreements must be kept, or everything needs to be done in good faith, meaning all your agreements must be kept. Right? So a violation is manifest if it would be objectively evident to any state conducting itself in the matter in accordance with normal practice and in good faith. Article 47, specific restrictions on authority to express the consent of a state. If the authority of a representative to express the consent of a state to be bound by a particular treaty has been made subject to a specific restriction, his omission to observe that restriction may not be invoked as invalidating the consent expressed by him, unless the restriction was notified to the other negotiating states prior to his expressing such consent. Who are they talking about? Your Minister of Foreign Affairs, plenipotentiary ambassadors, etc. Okay. So if the authority of a representative to express the consent of a state to be bound by a particular treaty has been made subject to a specific restriction, his omission to observe that restriction may not be invoked as invalidating the consent expressed by him, unless the restriction was notified to the other negotiating states prior to his expressing such consent. It has to happen prior, not after the fact. Article 48, error. 1, a state may invoke an error in a treaty as invalidating its consent to be bound by the treaty if the error relates to a fact or situation which was assumed by that state to exist at the time when the treaty was concluded and formed an essential basis of its consent to be bound by the treaty. Real quick, let me verify because I'm a little paranoid now. Can you all hear me just fine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if something happened where you can't hear me, like last time we had this earbud thing that happened. It went on for like 5 minutes or so. It was frustrating. Now I don't know how it switched to my earbud, but right now I've got the earbud far away. It's outside the house. It's in the trunk. So, but I don't know what's gonna happen. So if something happens, try to kind of like let me know the best way you can, to include a phone call. Hakeem, you calling me the other day, that helped a whole lot, because otherwise I wouldn't have realized what was going on. All right. 2, paragraph 1 shall not apply if the state in question contributed by its own conduct to the error, or if the circumstances were such as to put that state on notice of a possible error. Just in that article, in that statement, we've seen, I mean, thus far we've seen the term state so many times. You know, one of the main reasons to go over this treaty is to show and prove that we need states and that treaties, because this is the law of treaties. And so it's really to make the point clear that the only entities that can invoke treaty provisions are states, not individuals, not organizations, not churches, no temples, no associations, no club. States, countries, governments, nation states. Islam. 3, an error relating only to the wording of the text of a treaty does not affect its validity. Article 79 then applies. We'll get to Article 79. So it says an error relating only to the wording of the text, like a misspelling or something, of a treaty does not affect its validity. So if you misspell something, it still remain in force. Article 49, fraud. If a state, notice that, that's just what it is. States, it's all about states. If a state has been induced to conclude a treaty by the fraudulent conduct of another negotiating state, the state may invoke the fraud as invalidating its consent to be bound by the treaty. So you can't do it in fraud. It's an out for the other state. Everything has to line up, right? To include errors. Article 50, corruption of a representative of a state. If the expression of a state's consent to be bound by a treaty has been procured through the corruption of its representative, directly or indirectly, by another negotiating state, the state may invoke such corruption as invalidating its consent to be bound by the treaty. Right? No corruption. I mean, corruption, fraud, you're going against international law principles, so it wouldn't hold judicial standing anyway. Article 51, coercion of a representative of a state. the expression of a state's consent to be bound by a treaty which has been procured by the coercion of its representative through acts or threats directed against him shall be without any legal effect. So you can't coerce people, representatives and such, into becoming a contracting party to a state. I mean, to a treaty. I mean, that's really common sense, but obviously, common sense is not common, right? Everything needs to be put in writing. This is law. If it's not in writing, if the law is not in writing, then the law does not exist. It cannot just merely exist in the air or in the minds of whoever, the state or the officials. It has to be in writing. That's just law in general. Even negative law has to be in writing. That's why that Rodney Burton Bay case with the United States, even though they made their point in regards to him not being able to show and prove his verbal argument, it was still a fraudulent case. Why? Why was it a fraudulent case? Does anyone remember from that class or that reading, why was the Rodney Burton case fraudulent? Does anyone remember? I'll remind you. It's because he was being prosecuted. Let's go back to it real quick. This is why it was fraudulent. What am I highlighting? United States of America in all caps, being the plaintiff against Rodney LeVon Burton. Why is it fraudulent? Because the United States of America exists in the name only. There is no governing body that operates the United States of America. If there isn't a governing body, then that means also that there's no legislator. If there aren't no legislators or a legislative branch, then there are no laws. So if there isn't any laws on the book, then how can you prosecute me for something that doesn't really exist? That's why this case was fraudulent. That's why most of the cases are fraudulent, because there's always, well, the title of the case is the United States versus Burton, but then in the case itself is the United States of America versus Burton. Can someone mute their mic, please? I'm hearing a lot of background noise. So that's what makes it fraudulent. Article 53. Treaties conflicting with a preemptory norm of general international law. Just go, Jens. Let's read that title again.
Always conflict.
What was that?
They're always conflicting with international law.
What conflicts with international law?
They're in a conflict with international law.
Clarify what you're saying. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Do you care to clarify what you're saying?
I think she was saying they, as in the United States, are in conflict with international law.
Yes, they are.
Not really.
They are.
Okay. Give me an example as to how they are.
What that shit you just showed.
I'm sorry. There should be a what?
They're saying this country, and they're saying that they gotta be like, they gotta give up everything in order to become a U.S. citizen.
They're saying that you got to give up everything to become a U.S. citizen?
Yep.
Elaborate, please. I'm not. You're like short talking. Like, tell me what you're saying.
That's true.
Okay. Well, the act of adversaries is being used on us. They're certainly standing on international law with that. They have paid out lots of reparations and stuff to other states when they lost at the ICJ. That's respecting and adhering to international law. What they do internally or domestically has nothing to do with international law. It's just it's their internal operations. So, who's really violating international law, Sister Shira? Let me tell you who's really violating international law. Morocco and the nationals of Morocco, or really the Moorish subjects and Moorish proteges of Morocco are the ones who are violating international law.
Jira.
What was that?
Man,
What
you
was
ain't
that?
want to go there. I swear you don't want to go there. 'Cause
I'm-
that's the other part. That's the other part of me. You don't want to see that. And it is so damn ancient.
I'm sorry, for some reason I'm not getting a clear understanding on what it is that you're trying to say. Are you refuting that Morocco is not that Morocco is violating international law?
No, that's that what's the name? That part you don't want to see is that part. And you don't want to see that.
Okay.
You know what it is. You saw it before. I don't want to see it.
Well, all I'm saying is that Morocco is
That's
all I'm
what
saying
it
is, what was that? What I'm saying is that Morocco is violating international law because Morocco is acquiescing.
Right hand of the Most High.
Right. Well, Morocco is violating international law because Morocco is not operating international law. They're acquiescing. We are acquiescing. Well, we've been acquiescing. And
That's the other part you don't want to see. That's that part.
well, that's the main part. That's not the other part. That's the main part.
You don't want to see.
You know, we're violating international law because we're not. International law is Moroccan law. And we're supposed to be exercising these laws and using legislation against the foreign citizens, which is the United States and their people. But instead, they're using it against us. So they're certainly adhering to international law. Now they're violating our human rights internally, giving us civil rights. But if you're more subject, you're subjugated to the United States, which makes you property. In which case, they can basically do almost just about as much as they want to do with you. And what gives them the authority to do that? International law. International law. Okay, let's go to that again. I've been there before. I'll go there again. Paragraph 2 of Article 15 of the Treaty of Madrid. Where is it? Right there. Foreign naturalization heretofore acquired by subjects of Morocco. Can someone mute yourself? It's a lot of background noise, please. It's making it difficult to understand and speak. Foreign naturalization heretofore acquired by subjects of Morocco, according to the rules established by the laws of each country, shall be continued to them as regards all its effects without any restriction. So the right to do what they're doing to the Moroccan subjects. But why though? The Moroccan subjects failed
That's what we're trying to change.
What was that, sister? If you're not really talking, if you're talking to someone in the background, please, Sister Shira, you got to mute your mic. It's interrupting me.
I don't think they're supposed to be in there right now.
You don't think what?
We're not there yet.
We're not where?
If that's the case, we're gonna destroy 3/4 of the planet. Yeah. 3/4 of the planet must be destroyed. It must be.
What do you mean that 3/4 of the planet must be destroyed? What do you mean by that? Where is
What
that
I
coming
damn said.
from? Excuse me?
What I said. 3/4 of the planet must be destroyed if you do not come under the will of the Most High. They must be destroyed.
So this is not, okay, you're throwing me way, where is this coming from, Sister Sure, I thought you knew better than that. This has nothing to do with church, okay? We don't, we must come under
Church? What church? There is no church. There's church and state.
Well, you mentioned that we need to fall under the Most High, correct?
The Most High is the church and the state. There's only 1/3 of this or 1/3 of that.
All right, Islam, sister. Allow me to move on. I got your point. I'm gonna continue though. So, if you don't do,
what's actually like top down then?
if you don't do what paragraph 1 says for us to do, which it says any subject of Morocco who has been naturalized in a foreign country and who shall return to Morocco shall choose between the entire submissions of the laws of the empire.
Oh, this is like something totally. Is he?
You're interrupting. Could you please mute your mic? It's loud and it's causing interruptions. I would appreciate it.
My bad.
Yes, ma'am. So then what happens is your foreign naturalization, the heretofore acquired by subject of Morocco according to the rules established by the laws of each country shall be continued to them as regards all its effects without any restriction. What is that saying? Is that here international law, because they have read that and they're using it against us, but we are violating international law because we have not followed what the Sultan told us to do in paragraph 1. Now we're coming into our own. Now we're in law, outside of law. Please mute your mic, sister. I'm hearing background noises. Please mute it. Mute the mic. In fact, I don't even know how to mute people. So the United States is not out of law. It's not operating outside of international law. It's Morocco who's operating outside of international law. That's just the bottom line. Let me continue with this particular reading. Article 53, treaties conflicting with a preemptory norm of general international law just cogents. A treaty is void if, at the time, now listen to this closely. A treaty is, and this is the reason why the secret Treaty of Verona holds no judicial standing, right? A treaty is void if, at the time of its conclusion, it conflicts with a preemptory norm of general international law. Somebody has to mute their mic. Let me see who is it. There's 2 or 3 people unmuted, and there's a lot of background noise coming through. Please, I need you all to mute your mics if I would appreciate it. I'll pause until you mute your mic. And I think it's either Sister Shira or Jan Bay. Yhonbey. Sister Shira and Jan Bay, could you please mute your mics? Sister Shira, can I please have you to mute your mic if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
I got it. I took care of it. I shouldn't have had to say it so many times. 1, 2 times should be more than enough. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, continuing. A treaty is void if, at the time of its conclusion, it conflicts with a preemptory norm of general international law. For the purposes of this present convention, a preemptory norm of general international law is a norm accepted and recognized by the international community of states as a whole, as a norm. Let me see, as a whole, as a norm. I'm sorry, let me repeat that. A preemptory norm of general international law is a norm accepted and recognized by the international community of states as a whole, as a norm from which no derogation is permitted, and which can be modified only by a subsequent norm of general international law having the same character. Just cogence, if we understand what just cogence is dealing with human rights. So if the treaty is violating human rights in any way, then it would be void ab initio, because it cannot conflict or go against the preemptory norms of international law or just cogence, as you see it there in parentheses. So this is the reason why the secret treaty of Verona, which is the treaty, right, was never ratified, deposited, and promulgated. It's private law. Public law is common law. Private law is, for the most part, municipal law. And it ain't always necessarily negative or bad law. However, law, common law, has to be available for any and all peoples, states, etc., to disseminate the information in what's being said in the treaties or whatever agreement, convention, resolution that's being discussed in the document. Why do you want to keep it secret? Why do you not want to share the provisions and the information with the world? What are you hiding? Well, more than likely, you're making an attempt to violate just cogence. So the secret treaty of Verona is a internal agreement between themselves on how they're going to treat the Moors. But that has absolutely nothing to do with international law. What am I saying with all that? What I'm saying is, once we come back to Morocco and establish our state governments as Moroccan and become Moroccan nationals, no longer subjects of the United States, etc., the secret treaty of Verona will no longer have judicial standing. It has judicial standing for more subjects and proteges, but not nationals. Islam. So Article 53 basically kills the Treaty of Madrid, the secret treaty of Verona, and all their other little documents that they have put together, the paper bulls, all that stuff. That's why none of that stuff matters. I don't care about the paper bull. I don't care about the unum sanctum policies, right? I don't care about the Inter Caetera Divina. I can't even pronounce that barely. Section 3, termination and suspension of the operation of treaties. Article 54, termination of or withdrawal from a treaty under its provisions or by consent of the parties. The termination of a treaty or the withdrawal of a party may take place, A, in conformity with the provisions of the treaty. So the provisions will let you know what you need to do, right? The instructions, the general or miscellaneous provision. B, at any time by consent of all the parties after consultation with the other contracting parties. All right, so you must consult with the other contracting parties to terminate a treaty. Everyone has to be in agreement. Article 55, reduction of the parties to a multilateral treaty below the number necessary for its entry into force. What is a multilateral treaty? A treaty with 3 or more states. Bilateral would just be 2. Like the Treaty of Peace and Friendship is a bilateral treaty. United States of America and Morocco. And the Treaty of Madrid is a multilateral treaty. The Montevideo Convention is a multilateral treaty. Several states involved in it. Unless the treaty otherwise provides, a multilateral treaty does not terminate by reason only of the fact that the number of the parties falls below the number necessary for its entry into force. Article 56, enunciation of or withdrawal from a treaty containing no provisions regarding termination, denunciation, or withdrawal. So this is going to explain to us what happens when it doesn't have those that language or the provisions or the instructions in the provisions or the ability to withdraw in the provisions. So it says 1, a treaty which contains no provisions regarding its termination and which does not provide for denunciation or withdrawal is not subject to denunciation or withdrawal unless A, it is established that the parties intended to admit the possibility of denunciation or withdrawal, or B, a right of denunciation or withdrawal may be implied by the nature of the treaty. All right. And then 2, a party shall give not less than 12 months notice of its intention to denounce or withdraw from a treaty under paragraph 1. Now, I wonder where they get the 12-month notice from. Can anyone tell me?
Treaty of Peace and Friendship,
Exactly.
1836.
That's correct.
1836 one.
That's correct. Yeah. Yes, because the first one didn't have that. It was just a 50-year term. Excellent. Thank you, brother. Article 57, suspension of the operation of a treaty under its provisions or by consent of the parties. The operation of a treaty in regard to all the parties or to a particular party may be suspended. Parties also treat states, by the way. We read that in the beginning was in the glossary or the term definition of terms. A, in conformity with the provisions of the treaty, or B, at any time by consent of all the parties after consultation with the other contracting states. Did I already read that? I guess I did. I'm bugging. All right, Article 58, suspension of the operation of a multilateral treaty by agreement between certain of the parties, right? Certain of the parties, not all of them, certain. 2, 3 of them, 4. 1, 2 or more parties to a multilateral treaty may conclude an agreement to suspend the operation of provisions of the treaty temporarily and as between themselves alone, if A, the possibility of such a suspension is provided for by the treaty, or B, the suspension in question is not prohibited by the treaty and 1, does not affect the enjoyment by the other parties of their rights under the treaty or the performance of their obligation. 2, it is not incompatible with the object and purpose of the treaty. All right. 2, unless in a case falling under paragraph 1A, the treaty otherwise provides, oh, I went too far, provides the parties in question shall notify the other parties of their intention to conclude the agreement and of those provisions of the treaty, the operation of which they intend to suspend. Article 59, termination or suspension of the operation of a treaty implied by conclusion of a later treaty. So 1, the treaty shall be considered as terminated if all the parties to it conclude a later treaty relating to the same subject matter. A, it appears from the latter or the later treaty, or is otherwise established that the parties intended that the matter should be governed by that treaty. B, the provisions of the later treaty are so far incompatible with those of the earlier one that the two treaties are not compatible of being applied at the same time. Which treaty, which Morris Treaty to be exact, is absolved of that, more than likely? Okay, let's go to it.
Treaty of what is it called? The Act of Algeciras.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Where's that at? Do you remember the article, Amir? You know I know your voice now. You've been coming on so long, so much, man. I done memorized your voice, good brother.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Wow. I forgot the article. Let me see. It's around here. Let's go back to it. It should be in
it's at the bottom, I believe, in the last chapter.
Yeah. No, not that. Yeah, in the chapter 7. The general.
General, yeah, under the general provisions. According to.
Yeah. No. 122. 123. And last, before I forget, that's what the emperor said, the Sultan said. Before I forget, and last, all treaties, conventions, and arrangements. So what are we going over just right now that's talking about this? A convention, the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, right? All treaties, conventions, and arrangements of the signatory powers with Morocco remain in force. It is understood, however, that in case of conflict between their provisions and those of the present General Act, the stipulations of the latter shall prevail. So the Act of Algeciras shall prevail if there's any conflicts with the provisions. That would be the Act of Algeciras. All right. Article 60. Termination or suspension of the operation of a treaty as a consequence of its breach. 1, a material breach I wonder why this thing keeps popping up and then going away. Put it to the bottom. One, a material breach of a bilateral treaty by one of the parties entitles the other to invoke the breach as a ground for terminating the treaty or suspending its operation in whole or in part. So it can be partially or fully terminated. Two, a material breach of a multilateral treaty by one of the parties entitles A, the other parties by unanimous agreement to suspend the operation of the treaty in whole or in part, or to terminate it either, one, in the relations between themselves and the defaulting state, or two, as between all the parties. Keeping in mind, party means state. B, go ahead.
If you want to get rid of that bar on that black bar, by my name, there's a small button right there at the top. You see it?
Yeah. You're talking about the other dot?
There's the matrix there of 3 and 3, and then next to it is blue, and then next to it is just 1, and then next to it is a half of 1. Click the half of 1.
Well, I didn't see any of that.
You didn't? I'm looking at it. Huh.
Oh,
Okay.
it's over here. Okay, I know what you're talking about. It's not to your name, it's all the way to the left.
Yeah, it's above my name.
Okay. Well, it doesn't hide it fully, but it brings it small.
Okay. And then you can move it too, you can move it out of the way completely.
Correct. All right, that's good enough.
But it's still on my screen though. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. No, you're fine. But all you're seeing is the small one, right? Like
No, I see the whole list.
Oh. Well, for
That's
me, it's
okay.
on my end that it bothers me because it gets in the way of the reading.
Right. That's why I was suggesting.
So you can move it around on your end and put it wherever you need it to be, if I'm correct. Okay. B, a party especially affected by the breach to invoke it as a ground for suspending the operation of the treaty in whole or in part in the relations between itself and the defaulting state. C, any party other than the defaulting state to invoke the breach as a ground for suspending the operation of the treaty in whole or in part with respect to itself if the treaty is of such a character that a material breach of its provisions by one party radically changes the position of every party with respect to the further performance of its obligation under the treaty. So it's always based on the performance of the obligation. Why? Why is it always seems to be based on the performance of its obligations? Because of pacta sunt servanda. Agreements must be kept in good faith. It's an international norm. 3, a material breach of a treaty for the purpose of this article consisting of repudiation. Mute, please, mute. Somebody please mute. A repudiation of the treaty not sanctioned by the present convention, or B, the violation of a provision essential to the accomplishment of the object or purpose of the treaty. 4, the foregoing paragraphs are without prejudice to any provisions in the treaty applicable in the event of a breach. 5, paragraphs 1 to 3 do not apply to provisions relating to the protection of the human person. Just cogents, from which there should be no derogation. Paragraphs 1 to 3 do not apply to provisions relating to the protection of the human person. Why do they call, in international law, why do they call humans human person? Can anyone break that down for me or speak on that? I'm trying to get some engagement here. Can somebody tell me why they call human beings human persons?
Because they're natural beings or natural persons as opposed to a person, which could be a corporation or a business or a state.
Bingo. Bingo.
Yeah.
Exactly. Excellent. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. That's exactly correct. Article 61. Supervening impossibility of performance. All right. It's funny. Jay's, and you know this, Amir, Kazi, Isaac, and possibly Abdul. I'm not sure if Abdul is on the Kazi for New Mecca. You guys remember, if you read over the 55-page document and the 33-page document, the consular court orders that Jay Bay shared with us, he talks about this a lot. The states are not allowed to supervene the possibility of the performance of a state. And that language is clearly present in those judicial orders from AMPAG's consular court that they shared with us. So what does that mean? Well, let's go over it real quick. One, a party may invoke the impossibility of performing a treaty as a grounds for terminating or withdrawing from it if the impossibility results from the permanent disappearance or destruction of an object indivisible for the execution of the treaty. If the impossibility is temporary, it may be invoked only as a ground for suspending the operation of the treaty. Well, we don't want to suspend the operation of the treaties, do we? We want to keep it going. All we want to do is put everyone in their proper place, in the proper sequential order, meaning Moroccans over United States citizens and any other foreign citizen for that matter. Okay, and two, the possibility of performance and not be invoked by a party as ground for terminating, withdrawing from, or suspending the operation of a treaty if the impossibility is the result of a breach by that party, either of an obligation under the treaty, so it says a breach by the party or that state, either of an obligation under the treaty or of any other international obligation owed to any other party to the treaty, i.e., the United States of America, to the Moroccan states. They're obligated to their provisions in the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, the Madrid Convention, as well as the Act of Algeciras. And supervening the impossibility of performance means that they are getting in the way. They're not, or more importantly, they're not adhering to or acquiescing to consular court orders as they're supposed to. That's their obligation to follow, adhere, and basically, let's just use those two words: follow and adhere to Moroccan law. So if you're stalling and denying and playing games, then you're supervening the impossibility of performance, which is against Article 61 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, which is then against what? International law. So that language is in our consular court documents that was put together by the good brother J. Bay. Article 62, fundamental change of circumstances. One, a fundamental change of circumstances which has occurred with regard to those existing at the time of the conclusion of a treaty and which was not foreseen by the parties may not be invoked as a ground for terminating or withdrawing from the treaty unless A, the existence of those circumstances constituted an essential basis of the consent of the parties to be bound by the treaty, and B, the effect of the change is radically to transform the extent of obligations still to be performed under the treaty. It's all about pacta sunt servanda. Two, a fundamental change of circumstances may not be invoked as a ground for terminating or withdrawing from a treaty. A, if the treaty establishes its boundary, or B, if the fundamental change in the result of a breach by the party invoking it, either of an obligation under the treaty or of any other international obligation owed to any other party to the treaty. You see? Three, if under the foregoing paragraph, a party may invoke a fundamental change of circumstances as a ground for terminating or withdrawing from a treaty, it may also invoke the change as a ground for suspending the operation of the treaty. All right. Article 63. severance of diplomatic or consular relations. Oh, and by the way, talking about consular relations, I heard through the grapevine, y'all pay attention to this, y'all listen up real close, and perhaps um, uh, do your own research to verify the validity of the piece of information that I'm about to express to you all now that I've read the term consular relations. It has come to my attention that the good brother Lamont Maurice Ale has been arrested. I don't know how true it is, but the source that I got it from is a pretty solid source. You all do your research to make yourself approved. I haven't done any further research. I'm not sure how true it is, but the source that I got it from is tight with Sharon. We're very close to Sharon, and they got the information from Sharon Bay, just so you all know. So do your research. Hakeem, I already know you're going to do some good research on that. Islam, all right. So the severance of diplomatic or consular relations between parties to a treaty does not affect the legal relations established between them by the treaty, except insofar as the existence of diplomatic or consular relations is indispensable for the application of the treaty. All right. Article 64, emergence of a new preemptory norm of general international law. Just cogence again. So the preemptory norms of international law is just cogence. What is just cogence? Human rights and state rights. Give me a second to take a sip here. My mouth is dry. I'm sipping on the last bit of that lemonade that was at the banquet. By the way, y'all, I love lemonade. So that's why I took the whole bottle. Gratitude to everyone who showed up once again. All right. Article 64, emergence of a new preemptory norm of general international law. Just cogence. If a new preemptory norm of general international law emerges, any existing treaty which is in conflict with that norm becomes void and terminates. If a new preemptory norm of general international law emerges, any existing treaty which is in conflict with that norm becomes void and terminates. Now, the question then would be, what would be a new preemptory norm of international law that would cause any treaty to to terminate, become void and terminate? I'm not exactly sure, because we already know that human rights is already a in consideration, and human rights deal with almost everything: use of force, denationalization, genocide, etc. Can anyone think of something else? I mean, I'm all ears if you come up with something. All right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure myself what else could be, what new norm can cause a treaty to terminate if considering that the current preemptory norms covers all things dealing with human rights. Perhaps animal rights, I'm not sure. Article 65, procedure to be followed with respect to invalidity, termination, withdrawal from, or suspension of the operation of a treaty. 1, a party which, under the provisions of the present convention, invokes either a defect in its consent to be bound by a treaty or a ground for impeaching the validity of a treaty, terminating it, withdrawing from it, or suspending its operation, must notify the other parties of its claim. The notification shall indicate the measure proposed to be taken with respect to the treaty and the reasons therefore. I mean, does this not sound like instructions? Like if there's any question in regards to a treaty between, let's say, AMPAG and New Mecca, all we have to do is refer to the law of treaty to identify which way we need to go. A treaty between AMPAG and Mexico, a treaty between New Mecca and Brazil, because keep in mind, And put this in your hearts, put this in your spirit. Really understand, overstand, understand, and understand this. New Mecca is a country, a sovereign country at that, an organic country. State, country, nation, nation state, governments, semantics. They all mean the same thing. New Mecca has the full power to enter into treaties with Brazil. How do we know that? Well, the Montevideo Convention tells it all. So, New Mecca, check the boxes in Article 1. What is the boxes? The state as a person. So the states are a person. That's why, according to the, based on what the good brother Amir mentioned earlier, that's why they identify human persons from persons, because a person can be a state. A human person is a human. The state as a person of international law should possess the following qualifications. A permanent population. Brother Amir, do you have a permanent population?
Yes, we do. Nationals.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask next. What is your permanent population? You say your nationals, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's just part of your permanent population. What's your other permanent population?
The other more subjects and this so-called the citizens of the state of Oregon.
Mm-hmm. So how many people exist in Oregon, in the state of Oregon?
About
Probably
4
5
million
million.
plus.
Huh?
4 million plus.
4 million plus. So your permanent population consists of 4 million people.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Some of which are nationals of New Mecca, others which are foreign citizens, as well as Moorish subjects who fall under the authority of the Sharifian authority, or the jurisdiction of the Sharifian authority of New Mecca. That's according to the Act of Algeciras. This is why one of these brothers out here that are teaching these principles and charging $300, who's never checked the boxes, is all wrong with this. His position is that we need 1 million people in order to have a legitimate state. Otherwise, as he would say, quote unquote, it lacks political legitimacy. Well, where does Article 1 state any defined number? It doesn't have a defined number. If you didn't have no human beings in Oregon, but you still just had 5 nationals in New Mecca, you got a permanent population. When you look at this guy Pierre on YouTube from Mock Law, Mock International Law, MOOC, if you guys want to look into it, that's really where Jay got a lot of his reference points from to do further research. He explains that as well. He explained the Montevideo Convention in Article 1. He explained the principles of permanent population. And he said it himself. There is nowhere in international law where you find a defined number for a permanent population. It is what you got. You got countries as small as Monaco, who only got like 10,000 people. But then you got countries as huge as Russia, who's got probably, I don't know how many billions of people, probably. That doesn't make Russia more of a state than Monaco. They're both states and they're both sovereign. Just one has a lesser population than the other, but they're still states nonetheless. B, a defined territory. Amir, do you have a defined territory?
Yes, we do.
Okay. The uti possidetis jurisdiction, your longitude and latitude of your state, right?
Yes, it is.
Which formerly was what the state of Georgia was claiming. I mean, the state of Oregon was claiming, correct?
Correct.
That's
yes.
your defined territory.
Our international law, our international boundaries are the dominion of New Mecca, what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Which, by your full powers, those boundaries have become international borders.
International borders, correct.
Whereas under through the state of Oregon, they were not international borders,
Correct.
domestic borders. Not even that, because they
Yeah.
up our land, and we have to take it back as is. That's why uti possidetis juris is a principle, international principle that we must adhere to, because we have to, if we're going to force decolonization, we have to do it as is. And what is as is? Well, prior to the colonists coming in, we didn't have any borders. Now we do. So we slept and we acquiesced and slept for far too long, to where now the world has moved on and we have to do things in accordance with the way the laws that were established by the world, because the United Nations is sanctioned by the world, all the other state governments. It doesn't just come in existence by osmosis. So you have a permanent population, you have a defined territory. Do you have a government?
Yes, we do.
Okay. You're one of the branches, right? You're the
Executive branch.
That's exactly right. And you got a Sister Sheila is on. She's your Sayaraha, the legislative branch, and then you also have the judicial branch, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then the capacity to enter into relations with the other states. Based on A, B, and C is what gives you the capacity to enter into relations with other states.
Correct.
So now that I've went over Article 1, is it not sensible that New Mecca treaty relations with Iran as another state?
Yes, you're kind of muffled. Couldn't hear all you're saying.
Oh, goodness. What about now?
I can hear you.
Muffled? Am I still muffled, y'all?
No.
Okay. I don't know what that was. I hope I wasn't muffled for too long.
No.
I never know, because obviously I'm not on the other end of the call. But so has the point been made clear that New Mecca, AMPAG, and Meru can enter into relations with other states?
Yes.
Okay, that means there were countries.
Yep.
That means there were nations. That means there were states. That means there were nation states. We have to put that into our heads. This is not a game. This is not play. This is not an organization, a church, temple, association, club, Freemasonic, whatever. This is an actual country. Just because everything hasn't been fully manifested yet, keyword is yet, does not take away our full powers as sovereign states or sovereign nations. Understood?
Yes, understood.
So it says, so back to the Vienna Convention. 1, a party which under the provisions of the present convention invokes either a defect in its consent to be bound by a treaty, or a ground for impeaching the validity of a treaty, terminating it, withdrawing from it, or suspending its operation, must notify the other parties of its claim. The notification shall indicate the measure proposed to be taken with respect to the treaty and the reason therefore. Can someone please mute your mics? I would appreciate it. All right. 2, if after the expiry of a period which, except in cases of special urgency, shall not be less than 3 months after the receipt of the notification, no party has raised any objection, the party making the notification may carry out in the manner provided in Article 67 the measure which it has proposed. 3, if, however, objection has been raised by any other party, the parties shall seek a solution through the means indicated in Article 33 of the Charter of the United Nations. Okay. 4, nothing in the foregoing paragraph, I can't do it, I'm sorry. Let's go to the charter and see what Article 33 says, shall we? Let me do that real quick. Let's see, I still got the Mamelukes up. I can't believe I still got the Mamelukes up. Go to all. I think y'all remember what a Mameluke is. It's a soldier slave. Okay. Article 33. Article 33. Okay. It was there before I even United Charter. Let's see what that says. Okay, there it is. Charter of the United. Shoot. Clicked on the wrong one. Thank you for your patience. Give me 1 second here. Let's get to Article 33. I don't know why it says section. Oh my goodness. Give me 1 second, y'all. Article 33. I don't do classes without reference points of the charter of the United Nations. Okay. Just need to slow down a little bit. Okay, well, without having to go into it, it says it right here. The Security Council shall, when it deems necessary, call upon the parties to settle their dispute by such means. Let me go to it directly. I'm not sure if that's the only language. Okay, here we are. So it says, so it's the United Nations Charter, Chapter 6, Pacific Settlement of Disputes. Disputes between who? States, not persons, or should I say human persons, individuals, or any of the sort. Article 33 states that the parties of any dispute, the continuance of which is likely to endanger the maintenance of international peace and security, shall first of all seek a solution by negotiation, inquiry, mediation, conciliation, arbitration, judicial settlement, resort to regional agencies or arrangements, or other peaceful means of their own choice. Due process. 2, the Security Council shall, when it deems necessary, call upon the parties to settle their dispute by such means. Back to the treaty. So what does it say here? If, however, objection has been raised by any other party, the parties shall seek a solution through the means indicated in Article 33 of the Charter of the United Nations, in an effort to do what? Maintain peace and security through the negotiations between these states who may have an objection or an issue with the treaty. It's always going back to the Charter. 4, nothing in the foregoing paragraphs shall affect the rights or obligations of the parties under any provisions in force binding the parties with regard to the settlement of disputes. Am I still clear? I don't want to be muffled or unheard. Can you all hear me? Yeah. All right, good.
Still clear.
Yeah,
5,
we can hear you.
Islam. 5, without prejudice to Article 45, the fact that a state has not previously made the notification prescribed in paragraph 1 shall not prevent it from making such notification in answer to another party claiming performance of the treaty or alleging its violation. The instructions are in international law as to how we are supposed to operate as competent states with full powers. And so we really have to earn our place back in the affairs of men. Well, how do we earn that? By showing competency. How do we show competency? Following the instructions to the T. Cross the T's, dot the I's, check every box. Do everything in conformity with what the instructions of international law states. Yes, I know we're the Moroccans. Yes, I know we have the authority over all other states, right? That doesn't mean that we're allowed to be belligerent. Primarily, why? Well, you're just coming back into your own. You've been gone for 200 plus years. Where do you get off at coming in here trying to bully everybody when the world had moved on and they basically have control over your estate? No, we first have to earn the right to be I don't want to use the term recognized, because we're not seeking recognition and we're not required any form of recognition. However, the recognition that I guess I'm speaking of is the recognition of our power and authority. But we're just coming out of Negro, Blacks, Coloreds mindset. And so the international community may not take us seriously just off top like that. We have to show and prove. How do we show and prove? By following the instructions to the T and doing things in conformity with the preemptory norms of international law. In other words, we can't come in here belligerently trying to attack the United States, and because we got this authority, we're just gonna do whatever we think we want to do with them, to include revenge, meaning put them in slavery and have our police kill them. Well, y'all did it to us, we're gonna do it to you. No, 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 we can't do that. We will lose respect and the whole world will come down on us. We have to be humble. We must humble ourselves and follow the treaties and the instructions accordingly. Now, after 20, 30, 40, 50 years of this of our operation, in which we have now regained the respect of the world, now we can start doing things as we see fit, but still it must not violate the preemptory norms of international law. So we will never be able to violate the preemptory norms of human rights. We could at one point, because there was no central organization, middleman type organization like the United Nations to keep anybody in check. We were the United Nations. We were the law. And so we were operating without rules, enslaving people, doing whatever we want with people, keeping in mind that we did it to our own as well. Engage in all different types of wars amongst ourselves, trying to take each other's land. Most of those old wars that we learned in history was us against us. It was black on black crime, if you will. Crips and Bloods is nothing new. Crips and Bloods, the Crips and Bloods banging on each other has been that case. We have been doing this for centuries. It's just that now the Crips and Bloods are now doing it as more subjugated people on the lower level. But when we were on a higher level governing states, we still behave that way. Violating what? Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So karma took its course. We lost our power and became subjugated to others because we violated those 5 principles of light. That's why Prophet Noble Ali came, to remind us of those principles and bring us back into the proper mindset of our ancient foremothers and forefathers, the righteous ones. Those who reign in the order, those who uplifted fallen humanity. Can't do that without love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, y'all. Okay. 66, procedures for judicial settlement, arbitration, and conciliation, right? So this is due process. The procedures for judicial settlement. If under paragraph 3 of Article 65, no solution has been reached within a period of 12 months following the date on which the objection was raised, the following procedures shall be followed. Shall be followed. Instructions. A, any one of the parties to a dispute concerning the application or the interpretation of Article 53 or 64 may by a written application, where else did we live? Where did they get the term application from? Okay, let's go back to that. I got to remind y'all, they always go back to our treaties. What do we see here? Let me highlight it. Friendly application. Yep. If any difference, which deals with the same principle. Let's read it. If any differences shall arise by either party infringing on any of the articles of the treaty, peace and harmony. So the whole idea of peace, security, harmony, etc., comes from Moroccan law. Because we have always been love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice Moors. Right? Peace and harmony shall remain, notwithstanding, in the fullest force until a friendly application shall be made for an arrangement. And until that application shall be rejected, no appeal shall be made to arms. So now let me ask somebody on the line, whoever wants to answer, what is an application? Friendly or otherwise? What is an application in international law?
An agreement or a negotiable instrument. I don't.
Bingo. Your constitution is also an application. Your legislation is also an application. You're absolutely correct, though, sister. Islam. Somebody been studying, right? Any one of the parties to a dispute concerning the application or the interpretation of Article 53 or 64 may, by a written application submitted to the International Court of Justice, that's what we're getting ready to do, for a decision, unless the parties by common consent agree to submit the dispute to arbitration, due process, mediation, arbitration, adjudication. B, any one of the parties to a dispute concerning the application or the interpretation of any of the other articles in Part 5 of the present convention may set in motion the procedure specified in the annex to the convention by submitting a request to that effect to the Secretary General of the United Nations. So A deals with the International Court of Justice, B deals with the Secretary General of the United Nations. I mean, this is what we've been missing. This is what we've been blocked from. But those days are long gone. Article 67, instruments for declaring invalid, terminating, withdrawing from, or suspending the operation of a treaty. 1, the notification provided for under Article 65, paragraph 1 must be made in writing. 2, any act of declaring invalid, terminating, withdrawing from, or suspending the operation of a treaty pursuant to the provisions of the treaty or of paragraphs 2 or 3 of Article 65 shall be carried out through an instrument communicated to the other parties. Instrument, application. If the instrument is not signed by the head of state, head of government, or minister of foreign affairs, the representative of the state communicating it may be called upon to produce what? Full powers. So any Moorish state, or should I say, any group of Moors who are listening in, keep in mind that when you establish your state, and the good brother Mir could attest to this, when you're establishing your state, you need a minister of foreign affairs. However, you can get by without a minister of foreign affairs. Why? Because it could be the head of state or the head of government who operates the position of the minister of foreign affairs. Am I right or wrong, brother Amir?
You're absolutely right. Matter of fact, that happened to us. We didn't get a minister of foreign affairs until this month.
Exactly.
So we've been putting documents into the UN and other places as a head of state.
Exactly. So then now, but when you get your, so let's go back. So when you got your minister of foreign affairs, you had to transfer over your full powers to him to operate as a minister of foreign affairs. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Exactly. It's the model instruments in the the model instruments from the United Nations gives you what's called a full powers document that allows you to transfer your powers for the full powers of the head of state to the Minister of Foreign Affairs to operate as a representative on behalf of the state. Islam. So, brother Akil, if you're still there, I'm not sure because I cannot see this who's on. This is what I was explaining to you previously in regards to the second box of the triple principles, which is integrity of domains, which deals with acceding to the treaties as well as enacting legislation to accept those treaties, etc., your laws and such. But first, you got to accede to the treaties before you go any further. And in order for you to accede to the treaties, you got to transfer your full powers to your Minister of Foreign Affairs so that he may act on behalf of this, with full powers on behalf of the state as the representative of the state. So anyone who is online or maybe listening in, keep that in mind. And again, if you need any assistance with such a matter, just reach out. We'll help you out for free. You don't have to pay us $300. You don't have to give us a donation, but you do have to pay. What do you got to pay? What is the cost? Your time and your effort in actually doing it. That's the charge. Islam. Article 68. Revocation of notifications and instruments provided for in Articles 65 and 67. A notification or instrument provided for in Article 65 or 67 may be revoked at any time before it takes effect.
So question, right?
I'm listening.
I don't mean to cut your wisdom, right? So when I hear instrument, you know, based on like the multiple definitions, an instrument is practically a document used in credit. So example, like checks, drafts, notes, and bonds. How does that correlate to the notifications and enforcing the treaty?
Okay. So I'm talking to the sister Jana Musa Bey. Correct?
Yeah.
Islam sister. Well, I'm glad you came on. I didn't think you was gonna come, but you came.
No, I'm a person of my word. You know, that's our honor. That's all we got. It's too many times that we don't execute accordingly.
Exactly. That's one of the problems. However, so your question is based on two different forms of law. One is international law. The other one is municipal, internal United States municipal law. So what you're referring to is municipal laws. There, those instruments that they have. However, as it relates to international law, an instrument is, let's say, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship is an instrument, right?
Sure.
We're reading an instrument right now, which is the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties.
Okay. I was going to ask that question. What were we reading from? Thank you for that.
Okay, yes, we're reading. Okay, Islam, we're reading the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties of 1969. So this particular treaty or convention is giving us or giving states instructions on how to deal with treaties amongst states, right? Bilateral or multilateral treaties. Bilateral meaning two states, like the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, Morocco, with the United States of America. Multilateral meaning like the Treaty of Madrid, which is 12 signatory powers, including Morocco, which makes 13. And those are instruments, conventions, resolutions, treaties, acts. These are all instruments, international instruments.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
But then locally, or should I say internally, the driver's license is an instrument.
Correct.
Right? But then when we create our states and we establish our state, or should I say when we establish our states and then create our state IDs, that's also an instrument. Correct. The Constitution is an instrument.
Right.
Islam. Great question. Excellent question. And don't concern yourself with cutting my wisdom. Just jump on in and ask your questions or make your statements. It's all good. That's how we get down on these calls. Islam. All right. Section 5, consequences of the invalidity, termination, or suspension of the operation of a treaty. Article 69, consequences of the invalidity of a treaty. 1, a treaty, the invalidity of which is established under the present convention is void. The provisions of a void treaty have no legal force. So the invalidity of a treaty makes it void. What's an invalid? What would be an example of an invalidity of a treaty? I spoke on it earlier. Can someone give me an answer to that? What would make a treaty void and invalid?
It goes against just cogents.
Correct. Exactly. The preemptory norms. Sister Jama, just cogents basically means human rights. The preemptory norms of international law deals with human rights and state rights. So if there's a treaty that goes against human rights, it's valid. It's void ab initio, invalid. Okay. And void ab initio means void from the beginning, Latin. Okay, 2. If acts have nevertheless been performed in reliance on such a treaty, A, each party may require any other party. Parties are treaties. You missed the first part of this session, which deals with in the beginning of the treaty, the start of the treaty, the preamble deals with with a glossary of terms, right? And party in international law is a state, right? So person is also a state. Keep that in mind. So it says each party may require any other party to establish as far as possible in their mutual relations the position that would have existed if the acts had not been performed. Pacta sunt servanta. Agreements must be kept. B, acts performed in good faith before the invalidity was invoked are not rendered unlawful by reason only of the invalidity of the treaty. 3, in cases falling under Article 49, 50, 51, or 52, paragraph 2 does not apply with respect to the party to which the fraud, the act of corruption, or the coercion is imputable. No fraud, no corruption, no coercion is accepted. 4, in the case of the invalidity of a particular state's consent to be bound by a multilateral treaty, the foregoing rules apply in the relations between the state and the parties to the treaty. Sister Jana and everyone else on the line and anyone else who may be listening, but specifically you, Sister Jana, and your people, understand and recognize that as I'm reading this document, you keep seeing the term state pop up over and over and over. Why? Because it's the law of treaties, and treaties only deal with states. International law, the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, they only deal with disputes between states. So I know you may be, well, not may, you are aware of the old paradigm, the old Moorish paradigm, in which everything is based on individualism. We're doing everything alone. Everything is being done as an individual. You are supposed to go to RV Bay and you download your nationality ID, pay your $50, also download the, what do you call it? The name correction and judicial whatever. And you send it out to 7 different locations. You do it to yourself, by yourself, you. That's not the way of statehood. That's not the way of a Moor. Moors don't operate as individuals. We always operated as states. We gang up on people with states. We don't go at it alone. We don't go at it as individuals. You asking to get taken care of by the colonists because you're operating in an incompetent fashion. Were you saying something? Go ahead, sister.
No, I was just saying, right. And that's where that sovereign citizen complex come in, and you can't be both.
Bingo. It's a play on words. They know that we're sovereigns. They know we're sovereigns, but we're still citizens, i.e., sovereign citizen. And you're absolutely correct. That's where that comes from. All right, Article 7, consequences of the termination of a treaty. Unless the treaty otherwise provides or the parties otherwise agree, the termination of a treaty under its provisions or in accordance with the present convention, A, releases the parties from any obligation further to perform the treaty. B, does not affect any right, obligation, or legal situation of the parties created through the execution of the treaty prior to its termination. 2, if the state, if a state denounces or withdraws from a multilateral treaty, paragraph 1 applies in the relations between the state and each of the other parties to the treaty from the date when such denunciation or withdrawal takes effect. Article 71, consequences of the invalidity of a treaty which conflicts with a preemptory norm of general international law. Just cogents, they keep talking about anything that conflicts with the preemptory norms of international law. Also, Morris, keep in mind too, in going over this document and any other treaty, we're learning how to put together our own treaties, because we've done that before. The treaties come from Moroccan law, we just lost our way. So in reading over these documents, we're starting to recognize and understand how to put a treaty together. And we're gonna have to learn how to do that because we are the world power that the United States has been pretending to be. They have been taking our place. We have traded places. That Montevideo Convention was enacted primarily by the United States. Imagine that. And other American, so-called American state, meaning when I say American states, I'm talking about the Western Hemisphere, right? North, Central, and South America. But we know that that's Morocco. So we're gonna have to put treaties together. One treaty in particular is gonna be amongst our own Moorish state governments, right? So Meru, AMPAG, New Mecca, AMPAC, and anyone else who comes online, we're gonna establish a treaty amongst ourselves. And from that treaty, from that arrangement, from that instrument, from that friendly application, we will then establish another instrument or friendly application. That would be the constitution for the government of Morocco again. So we have to reestablish the government of Morocco, the empire, but we do that through our states. It doesn't start from Morocco to the smaller states. It starts with the smaller states coming together to establish the empire or reestablishing, bringing Morocco out of a shallow grave, the empire that is. And so,
do we
go ahead.
need, is it, just from research, do we need 13?
That's the goal. It's to start with get to 13, and then from there, establish the Moroccan empire. However, that's not a hard rule. That's just an idea. We can do it with 5. We can do it with 10. In fact, and speaking with the good brother Jay, we have we might do it with just 5 or 6. However many come online before it's time to go to the ICJ. We may just do it with that group. However many that is. So we're not limited to, we don't have to do it by 13. One of the main reasons why the idea was to do 13 is because the prophet told us that he will leave the European here long enough to teach us how to run a government. Well, how did the United States come into existence? Through 13 colonies. So if we were to mirror what they have done, then that means then that we would need 13 states. But it's not necessarily so, because we have the ultimate authority anyway. So we can reestablish Morocco with 5 states if we wanted to. The point is to establish the constitution for the Moroccan Empire and bring it back through that legislation, which is your constitution, and then have elections to establish the 3 branches of government: the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch for the Empire of Morocco, which would then have the authority over all our interdependent states, our smaller interdependent states.
Islam.
Brother, what you do?
One quick comment: in the establishment of the constitution for the Empire of Morocco, all the various states, more states, are going to have to hold a constitutional convention in order to have that meeting of the minds to establish that instrument.
No question. No doubt. I appreciate you adding that to the conversation, brother.
Islam.
Come through, good brother. I appreciate you. All right. Where was I? So, okay, Article 71. Consequences of the invalidity of a treaty which conflicts with a preemptory norm of general international law. 1. In the case of a treaty which is void under Article 53, the parties shall A. eliminate as far as possible the consequences of any act performed in reliance on any provision which conflicts with the preemptory norms of general international law. There cannot be any derogation from it, y'all, which is human rights. We cannot violate human rights. That's just the bottom line. And I'm good with that. I don't see why that would be a problem. Why do we want to violate human rights? We're already coming from being violated. We know how that works, how that feels, and how it works. And we've already done that anyway, which is why we fail. So I think as much as it will be prudent to remain in the spirit of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and uphold human rights, which would be equivalent to what? Uplifting fallen humanity. That's our purpose. B, bring their mutual relations into conformity with the preemptory norm of general international law. 2, in the case of a treaty which becomes void and terminates under Article 64, the termination of the treaty, A, releases the parties from any obligation further to perform the treaty. B, does not affect any right, obligation, or legal situation of the parties created through the execution of the treaty prior to its termination, provided that those rights, obligations, or situations may thereafter be maintained only to the extent that their maintenance is not in itself in conflict with the new preemptory norm of general international law. Article 72. Consequences of the suspension of the operation of a treaty. What are the consequences? 1, unless the treaty otherwise provides or the parties otherwise agree, the suspension of the operation of a treaty under its provisions or in accordance with the present convention, A, releases the parties between which the operation of the treaty is suspended from the obligation to perform the treaty in their mutual relations during the period of the suspension. B, does not otherwise affect the legal relations between the parties established by the treaty. 2, during the period of the suspension, the parties shall refrain from acts tending to obstruct the resumption of the operation of the treaty. Part 5, miscellaneous provisions, miscellaneous instructions, provisio. Article 73. It's funny how the Black's Law Dictionary, the good brother Jay really broke that down, exposed that. The Black's Law Dictionary, the word provision in the Black's Law Dictionary deals with food. So it's like they were trying to hide what provisions mean. It's found under the definition is found under a different word. I can't recall what the word is. If anyone else on here remembers that word, please speak on it. I don't have my Black's Law Dictionary at the moment, so I can't look at it. Article 73, cases of state succession, state responsibility, and outbreak of hostilities. Let's see what's up with that. The provisions of the present convention shall not prejudge any question that may arise in regard to a treaty from a succession of states, or from the international responsibility of a state, or from the outbreak of hostilities between states. And that's what we're gonna have. That's what's gonna take place after we come back from the ICJ. There's gonna be a succession of state, right? Whereas the United States is gonna have to relinquish their territorial jurisdiction, and all the power and authority will be put back in the hands of the Moroccans. And they will fall under our authority. as good boys and good little girls, adhering to Moroccan laws without the concern of their human rights being violated. And we have to make that clear for the Albayans because they're taxpayers and we need to treat them fairly. We need to treat them accordingly. We need to treat them like humans. You go to work, make your money, where everybody's going to be making good money once the Moors take back over, which is going to make it to where you can afford your taxes, pay your taxes, all is well. You don't have to worry about any form of persecution, enslavement, right? Deaths, unwarranted arrests, because you can best believe some of these people going to jail. They got to pay for their crimes against humanity. But that's not everybody. These are the people that got to pay for these atrocities, are the, what you might call elites, your Jacobs, Jews, right? Your high-level politicians. But more importantly, the people that will be held accountable for damn sure will be our own. Your Al Sharptons and your Farrakhan's and all the likes.
Jackson.
What was that?
I said Jesse Jackson.
Can't forget that name. Who branded us as what? African Americans. Well, we'll be dealing with our own first, before we even touch a colonist. We got to deal with ours first. The colonists got to know that we are more than willing to adjudicate and hold our own accountable. They understand that. We talk about a higher level of respect, because they will also understand that you come next. Go ahead.
Islam, right? So just, off of observation, like when looking at what we would call the Europeans, or depending on your studies, you'll say oh my goodness, I can't even think of it right now. The Albions. So my thing is, like, they have multiple categories where they classify themselves, right? And even though they still fall in the collective, it's just like, for those that are aware, why can't it be that? Why can't, if some like Asiatics, and some would probably possibly say we're not Asiatic, why can't some skin folk like classify themselves as that, and others classify them as that, and just leave that, versus the whole collectively falling under one denomination?
Well, the treaty identify each party accordingly. It doesn't matter what Moors call themselves, and it doesn't matter what the Albayans call themselves. What does the treaty say? And according to the treaties, they are foreign citizens, and we, under the jurisdiction of the foreign citizens, would be Moorish subjects or Moroccan subjects or proteges. That's what the treaty say. However, in our proper person, we will be Moroccans or Moroccan nationals. Them, in their proper person, they would still be foreign citizens. I don't care if they call themselves white. I don't care what they call themselves. According to the treaty, they're foreign citizens. So that's how we would identify them as foreign citizens. See, they have legislation to call themselves white. They call themselves white based on legislation. And they have legislation to call us black. But white and black is not a people. Meaning that in order for them to denationalize us, they had to denationalize themselves. And not only did they denationalize themselves, they put everyone in the status of a corporation. When they buried the United States of America and established the Act of Congress of 1871, whereas it became the United States Municipal Corporation. So it's a lot of little tricks that they have operated over the years. However, the treaties still stand. And what does the treaty say? Foreign citizens and Moroccan subjects or nationals. Does that make your point? Does that give you some understanding?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what they are. We don't care what they call themselves. They can call themselves $5 Indians. Call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. Our legislation recognizes you as a foreign citizen. You can call yourself whatever you want within your jurisdiction. But here in Morocco, outside of your jurisdiction, which is it's not really it's not as relevant as the Moroccan jurisdiction. In Morocco, you're a foreign national, or should I say foreign citizen. Could even be a foreign national, foreign countries. And we would be known and considered as the Moroccans, Moroccan nationals, the Moors, Moorish national. We're not Moorish Americans. That's the other thing. That's the other thing that they're known as, Americans. When I say foreign citizens, okay, let me make this clear. When I say foreign citizens, it's not limited to the citizens of the United States. It could be any one of the other signatory powers, Hungary, Spain, France, Great Britain, etc. All those people of those nations are foreign citizens. However, those who have become naturalized or gained citizenship through the United States will be now considered Americans. So that would be the other identifier. They are the Americans. We are the Moroccans. They are the foreign citizens. We are the Moroccans. Under a subjugated status, though, we would be Moorish subjects or Moroccan subjects and proteges. So we have to understand the difference between the two. Islam. All right. Article 74, diplomatic and consular relations and the conclusion of treaties. The severance or absence of diplomatic or consular relations between two or more states does not prevent the conclusion of treaties between those states. The conclusion of a treaty does not in itself affect the situation in regard to diplomatic or consular relations. Consular relations. See, they're talking about consular relations. Where is consular court? In Morocco. So basically, I guess what I'm saying is it sounds like we're reading a Moroccan treaty, aren't we? That wasn't even written by Moroccans. Imagine that. All right. Where was I? 75. Case of an aggressor state. Okay. What happens with an aggressor state, such as the United States, for example, which is the possibility that a lot of Moors are concerned about? And by the way, whenever there's a concern, can anyone answer this question? I know somebody can. If there's ever a concern, what are we supposed to do?
Draft legislation.
Thank you, Islam. Wherever there's a concern, enact legislation to deal with that concern. Case of an aggressor state, the provisions of the present convention are without prejudice to any obligation in relation to a treaty which may arise from an aggressor state in consequence of measures taken in conformity with the Charter of the United Nations with reference to that state's aggression. You can't agree, cannot use of force. Part was that. 7. Depositaries, they got that spelled differently. A lot of the words are spelled different in international laws, in the international law. Depositaries or depositories, notifications, corrections, and registration. Maybe that's another word, but I think that's meaning depository. Let's find out. Article 76, depositaries of treaties. Is depository. Yeah, same thing. They just spelling it with an A. Interesting. 1, the designation of the depository of a treaty may be made by the negotiating states, either in the treaty itself or in some other manner. The depository may be one or more states, an international organization, or the chief administrative officer of the organization. So a depository could be another state. Okay, let's say here, for example, What was the depository in 1933 with the Montevideo Convention? Where was it? Okay, here. The present convention shall remain in force indefinitely, but may be denounced by means of 1 year's notice given to the Pan American Union. The Pan American Union was the depository. But let's see where it says it. It says it specifically. It's in the provision. Be ratified. Okay, here it is. 13. The present convention shall be ratified by the high contracting parties in conformity with their respective constitutional procedures. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Uruguay shall transmit authentic certified copies to the governments of the aforementioned purpose of ratification. The instrument of ratification shall be deposited in the archives of the Pan American Union in Washington, which shall notify the signatory governments to said deposit. Such notification shall be considered as an exchange or ratification. So this is 1933, Montevideo Convention. Well, as of 1945, the new depository is actually the United Nations. However, according to this particular, which article is this? Article 76, it also says that depository may be one or more states, or it also could be an international organization, or the chief administrative officer of the organization. So what would be an international organization? It could be the United States, because the United States is an international organization, not a state, right? But the ultimate international organization in which we deposit our treaties and constitutions, ratified constitutions and such, is the United Nations. That's also an international organization that does not operate as a state in no way, shape, form, or fashion. The United States operates as a state, but it's an international organization, which is why we have authority over them, because they're not an organic state. They're an international organization pretending to be a state, whereas we are an actual organic Moroccan state. We supersede them. Young Jedi, Luke, that beheaded Darth Vader. What was the name of that movie? I was talking to Jay, he brought it up. The Empire Strikes Back? No, something about the Jedi. The Return of the Jedi. The Return of the Jedi. That's when, in that movie is when Luke Skywalker became Luke Skywalker. And he was unstoppable. Why was he unstoppable? Because he came to the understanding, the understanding, and the inner power that he was a Moroccan. And he had the Moroccan law on his side. So what does that lightsaber represent? Your pan. Luke Skywalker, Return of the Jedi. Keeping in mind that Darth Vader was his father. Neo, who jumped inside of Agent Smith and stopped bullets with one hand and danced around bullets and handled helicopters because he got out of his way. He couldn't think anymore. He had to just do. And when he was on the roof, handling that helicopter and dancing around bullets, but more specifically, when he was handling that helicopter, he was doing it. Why? What spirit? Okay, let's ask a question. What spirit and mind frame was Neo in when he was handling that helicopter on that roof? We have forgotten. Because we got to go back and look at the Matrix again. He was in the spirit of love. Because if he hadn't handled that helicopter, who was piloting the helicopter?
His love interest.
Trinity.
I couldn't remember her name.
So Neo, remember, Will Smith was supposed to play Neo. So Neo was supposed to be a Moor. The Oracle was a matriarch, a Moor. And his mentor, Morpheus, was a Moor. So Neo got out of his way, got out of his own head, forgot about all his shortcomings in the spirit of love, and he handled the hell out of that helicopter to save Trinity, and then after that to save his mentor Morpheus. That
Also,
go
he
ahead.
stopped being afraid, because he had a lot of fear before he came to know who his true power.
That's my point.
When he was in the hallway, I think it was when he was fighting the agent, and then he just realized I got more power than this guy, and the guy ran into him, and they ran into each other, and he realized he's the one.
And that happened after what? It still had to deal with love too, though, because when he came to the mindset of, oh man, I got way more power than these guys. When did he realize that? Because remember, he came out of the room. Agent Smith was right there. Bop, 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 bop. Shot him up, didn't they? He died.
Right.
But who started talking to him in his ear?
Trinity.
Love instead of hate.
Go
ahead.
The book, the good book also say perfect love casts out fear.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. It's all about love. With love, you don't have any fear. You don't have hate and you don't have fear. By the way, keep in mind, fear is an acronym. False expectations appearing real. In other words, it's just an illusion. Do as you're supposed to. You just check the boxes and don't worry about what these colonists gonna do if you think they're gonna do something. As long as we're in the spirit of love, when we do things in conformity with international law, just cogents, preemptory norms of international law, we're gonna win. We will beat them. Easily, without a doubt. They can't hold a candle to us, man. But we have to come to the mindset of Neo. When he just started doing all these wonderful things. I mean, so he got shot up, he died. Trinity started whispering things in his ear. He just suddenly stood up. Agent Smith looked at him with his eyes wide open, like, what the hell? Oh my God, is this the one? And now they fighting, and everything is moving in slow motion to Neo now. He's just, every blow is being blocked, every kick, every swing. Then they started shooting bullets at him. What'd he do? He just put his hands up like, man, whatever. The bullets just stopped and dropped. And then he jumped in them and blew them up that way. That's powerful, man. That's a powerful message for us Moors. In fact, in hindsight now, I'm thinking that they were talking to us. Who else could they have been talking to? In fact, all the superhero Marvel movies is dealing with us. We are Green Lantern. We are Superman. Kal-El, the House of El, the red flag on his cape. The whole family was the El family. Come on. We really be playing ourselves and acquiescing, not realizing that we got all the authority and all the power. That's our problem right there. And who's responsible for that? Negro leaders who have sold us out over and over and over again over the years, the past 100 years, since Prophet Noble Drew Ali was assassinated by more than likely his own. Malcolm was assassinated by his own. Get your hands out my pocket. Martin Luther King was assassinated by his own, and who was standing right next to him? Jesse, Mr. African American. Something else, man. That's why they got to get dealt with first before anyone else. The Negro leaders. Article 77, functions of depositories. The functions of a depository, unless otherwise provided in the treaty or agreed by the contracting states, comprise in particular A, keeping custody of the original text of the treaty and of any full powers delivered to the depository. B, preparing certified copies of the original text and preparing any further text of the treaty in such additional languages as may be required by the treaty and transmitting them to the parties and to the states entitled to become parties to the treaties. Okay, where did they get that from? Let's take a look. You know how I do. I'm gonna keep bringing it back to y'all. So, in the provision of the Treaty of Madrid, where is it at? The convention shall be ratified. The ratification shall be exchanged at Tangier with as little as delay as possible by exceptional consent of the high attracting parties. The stipulations of this convention shall take effect on the day on which it was signed at Madrid. This is not what I was looking for, but it's basically got the same concept in the language. But I'm looking for specific language. Let's go to the active adversary. I think that's where it's at. Let's see. Let's go up. Because it said something about the text. Right? The President General Act shall be ratified according to the constitutional laws of each state. The ratification shall be deposited at Madrid as soon as practicable, and at the latest by December 31st, 1906. A process verbal shall be made of such deposit, and a certified copy sent to each of the signatory powers through the diplomatic channel. The President General Act shall enter into effect as soon as all the ratifications shall have been deposited, and at the latest on December 31st, 1906, in case of special legislative measures which may be necessary in certain countries to ensure the application to their nationals living in Morocco of certain stipulations of this present General Act shall not have been enacted by the date fixed for ratification. This is not what I'm looking for. And it says only become applicable in respect to them after the legislative measures above referred to shall have been promulgated. There was one, which article is the one that deals with the text? In fate whereof the delegates plenipotentiary have signed the present General Act and have, I swear it must have been, I think it was let's see. The right to the treatment of the most favored nation is recognized. Oh man, where is it? I don't want to waste too much time looking for it. One of these treaties deals with the text that gets transmitted. It's not 16. So that means it's got to be the Treaty of Madrid. Because there's so many different provisions. But one of them deals with the text, as it was saying in the law of treaties, as it relates to each nation that's a part of the multilateral treaty. Let's see. Oh man, I don't want to waste time looking for it. I thought I would have got straight to it as I usually do, but for some reason I'm not. Process verbal shall be made. Well, that could be that's the point. That could be it. That's not it, but that could be the same concept. A process verbal shall be made of such deposit and a certified copy sent to each of the signatory powers through the diplomatic channel. President General Act enter into effect as soon as all the ratifications shall have been deposited, and at the latest. Okay, I'm not gonna waste any further time looking for this. Might be right here. Okay, right here. Done at Algeciras this 7th day of April, 1906, in a single copy which shall remain deposited in the archives of the government of His Catholic, and of which certified copies shall be transmitted through the diplomatic channel to the signatory powers. It might have been the Madrid Convention. Well, these are the signatory powers: Germany, Austria-Hungary, Belgium, Spain, United States of America, France, Great Britain, Italy, Morocco, Netherlands, Portugal, Russia, Sweden. Anyway, I'm not going to waste time looking for that. But like it says right here, preparing certified copies of the original text and preparing any further text of the treaty in such an additional languages as may be required. That's one of those treaties. Which one was it? I can't remember. I ain't gonna waste time with it, but that's where they get it from. It was either the Madrid Convention or the Act of Algeciras. I'm just probably looking past it. Okay, so C, receiving any signatures to the treaty and receiving and keeping custody of any instruments, notifications, and communications relating to it. I mean, that's what these. Okay, so what am I looking at when I go back and I look at the Treaty of Madrid and the Act of Algeciras? Those two treaties are Moroccan treaties written by Moroccan governments. This right here, which is the Convention on the Law of Treaties, is not written by Moroccan governments. It was written by the Charter of the United Nations. And the Charter is composed of 193 member states, 5 in particular, the United States, France, China, Russia, and I forgot the other one, Netherlands, I believe. So they get their information, they get their languages from our treaties. Everything that I'm reading here comes from what I just read, except for the text part. I can't find the text part. D, examining whether the signature or any instrument notification or communication relating to the treaty is in due and proper form. That language is coming off of our treaties as well. If need be, bringing the matter to the attention of the state in question. All right, and E, informing the parties and the states entitled to become parties to the Treaty of Acts, notifications, and communications relating to the treaty. So when they're informing the parties, that's the diplomatic channels. It must be the document must be transmitted through the diplomatic channels. That's what we just read. We just read that. Done at Algeciras this 7th day of April, 1906, in a single copy, which shall remain deposited in the archives of the government of His Catholic Majesty, and of which certified copies shall be transmitted through the diplomatic channel to the signatory powers. Our treaties is what gave birth to international law. F, informing the states entitled to become parties to the treaty when the number of signatures or of instruments of ratification, acceptance, approval, or accession required for the entry into force of the treaty has been received or deposited. They are getting the instructions from our Moroccan treaties. G, registering the treaty with the Secretariat of the United Nations. So we have to register the treaty with the United Nations, the Secretariat. His name is Antonio Guterres. H, performing the functions specified in other provisions of the present convention. 2, in the event of any difference appearing between a state and the depository as to the performance of the latter's functions, the depository shall bring the question to the attention of the signatory states and the contracting states, or where appropriate, of the competent organ of the international organization concerned. All right. What time is it? 9:43. How much do we have? We're almost finished, I believe. Notification and communications. 78. Except as the treaty or the present convention otherwise provide, any notification or communication to be made by any state under the present convention shall, A, if there is no depository, be transmitted direct to the state for which it is intended, or if there is a depository, to the latter. So in this case, there's a depository. That's the Secretary General, United Nations. Can everyone still hear me clearly? Am I muffled? Am I far? Is everything
You're
good?
good. We can hear you.
Clear to me.
Good. B, be considered as having been made by the state in question only upon its receipt by the state to which it was transmitted, or, as the case may be, upon its receipt by the depository. C, if transmitted to a depository, be considered as received by the state for which it was intended only when the latter state has been informed by the depository in accordance with Article 77, paragraph 1. Article 79, correction of errors in texts or in certified copies of treaties. Where after the authentication of the text of a treaty, the signatory states and the contracting states are agreed that it contains an error, the error shall, unless they decide upon some other means of correction, be corrected, A, by having the appropriate correction made in the text and causing the correction to be initialed by duly authorized representatives. Your Minister of Foreign Affairs, who has the full powers extended to him from the head of state, for example, right? B, executing or exchanging an instrument or instruments, setting out the correction which it has been agreed to make. Or C, by executing a corrected text of the whole treaty by the same procedure as in the case of the original text. 2, where the treaty is one for which there is a depository, the latter shall notify the signatory states or powers. Some say signatory powers, others say signatory states, and the contracting states of the error and of the proposal to correct it, and shall specify an appropriate time limit within which objection to the proposed correction may be raised. If on the expiry of the time limit, A, no objection has been raised, the depository shall make and initial the correction in the text and shall execute a process verbal. Where did we read that? I swear they get everything from us. You know, it's like they don't just, it's not just treaties, it's our swag and everything. Let me see. Where do we see process verbal? There it is. You see that? The present general act shall be ratified according to the constitutional laws of each state. The ratification shall be deposited at Madrid as soon as practicable, and at the latest by December 31st, 1906. A process verbal shall be made of such deposit and a certified copy sent to each of the signatory states or signatory powers through the diplomatic channels. Come on, y'all. What are we talking about? Oh man, they steal everything from us. They steal our swag. They steal our treaties, language, our treaty language. They steal our style. They steal our names. Come on. I lost my position here. Okay, there it is. On no objection has been raised. If no objection has been raised, the depository shall make and initial the correction in the text and shall execute a process verbal of the ratification of the text and communicate a copy of it to the parties and to the states entitled to become parties to the treaty. B, an objection has been raised, the depository shall communicate the objection to the signatory states or signatory powers and to the contracting states. 3, the rules in paragraph 1 and 2 apply also where the text has been authenticated in 2 or more languages and it appears that there is a lack of concordance, which the signatory states and the contracting states agreed should be corrected. 4, the corrected text replaces the defective text ab initio, unless the signatory states and the contracting states otherwise decide. The correction of the text of a treaty that has been registered shall be notified to the Secretariat of the United Nations. 6, where an error is discovered in a certified copy of a treaty, the depository shall execute a process verbal specifying the ratification and communicate a copy of it to the signatory states and to the contracting states, right? I mean, all this stuff is coming off of our treaties. Article 80, registration and publication of treaties. Man, we fell so far, like, oh my God, like this came out in 1969. They're using our language and our treaties. In the meantime, what are we doing? be running around marching and praying, begging for legislation to stop the hangings and stop the police brutality. And oh my God, man, when I read these treaties and I recognize these principles, it breaks my heart. It really does. And it frustrates me because it was done by these Negroes, helping out the colonists. I mean, the language is coming off of our treaties, y'all. And while it's coming off of our treaties and they're using our treaty languages, we have no idea. We don't even have that same tongue. We don't even have that same vernacular. We don't even use that same language. That's why the prophet said, we got to change the literature of the people in order to change the people. So now, right now, we need to start understanding ratification, depository, promulgation, process verbal, depository, all these things. We got to change our vernacular. 1, treaties shall, after their entry into force, be transmitted to the, I already read that. Did I? No, United Nations for registration or filing. No, I didn't. Treaties shall, after their entry into force, be transmitted to the Secretariat of the United Nations for registration or filing and recording as the case may be, and for publication or promulgation. So this is the instructions, y'all. These are the instructions. They're telling us what we need to be doing. This is why they kept us away from this information and put us in a Negro black colored mindset. Hebrew Israelites and Pan-Africans and everything else. 2, the designation of a depository shall constitute authorization for it to perform the act specified in the preceding paragraph. Okay, what does that say? 7, final provisions. Article 81, signature. Okay. So the present convention shall be open for signature by all states members of the United Nations or any of the specialized agencies or of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Wow. What is that? Right? International Atomic Energy Agency, right? Or parties to the statute of the International Court of Justice. We are parties to the to the statutes of the International Court of Justice because we've acceded to the statutes of the ICJ. And by any other state invited by the General Assembly of the United Nations to become a party to the convention as follows. Until 30th November 1969, at the Federal Ministry for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Austria, and subsequently until 30 April 1970 at United Nations headquarters, New York, Morocco. Article 82, ratification. The present convention is subject to ratification. The instruments of ratification shall be deposited with the Secretary General of the United Nations. Notice that they keep saying the present convention, the present convention. Well, when you go back to the convention of the Treaty of Madrid, that's what it says too, the present convention. Because the Treaty of Madrid was a convention. Oh my goodness, they still there. They just okay. So Article 83, accession. The present convention shall remain open for accession by any state belonging to any of the categories mentioned in Article 81. The instruments of accession shall be deposited with the Secretary General of the United Nations. 84, Article 84, entry into force. The present convention shall enter into force on the 13th day following the date of deposit of the 35th instrument of ratification or accession. 2, for each state ratifying or acceding to the convention after the deposit of the 35th instrument of ratification or accession, the convention shall enter into force on the 30th day after deposit by such state of its instrument of ratification or accession. We fall under the principles of accession, right? This thing was in 1969, so it's already in full force. So all we can do now is accede to it and become a party and become parties to it, so that we can now invoke those provisions against any other state who may be signatory powers to it. Keeping in mind that the United States, for example, may not. I don't think that they're part of the Vienna Convention. or signatory powers in the Vienna Convention. However, it's still international law, and they must oblige to international law nevertheless. Authentic text. The original of the present convention, of which the Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish text are equally authentic, shall be deposited with the Secretary General of the United Nations. And it says shall, by the way, which means there's no way around it. You must. In witness whereof, the undersigned plenipotentiaries, being duly authorized thereto by their respective governments, have signed the present convention, done at Vienna this 23rd day of May, 1969. What does the annex say? 1, a list, which is done. We're finished, but let's go into the annex. 1, a list of conciliators consisting of qualified jurists shall be drawn up and maintained by the Secretary General of the United Nations. To this end, every state which is a member of the United Nations or a party to the present convention shall be invited to nominate 2 conciliators, and the names of the persons so nominated shall constitute the list. The term of a conciliator, including that of any conciliator nominated to fill a casual vacancy, shall be 5 years and may be renewed. The conciliator whose term expires shall continue to fulfill any function for which he shall have been chosen under the following paragraph. 2, when a request has been made to the secretary, went too far. When a request has been made to the Secretary General under Article 66, the Secretary General shall bring the dispute before a conciliation commission constituted as follows. The state or states constituting one of the parties to the dispute shall appoint a 1 conciliator of the nationality of that state or of one of those states who may or may not be chosen from the list referred to in paragraph 1. And B, 1 conciliator not of the nationality of that state or of any of those states who shall be chosen from the list. The state or states constituting the other party to the dispute shall appoint 2 conciliators in the same way. The 4 conciliators chosen by the parties shall be appointed within 60 days following the date on which the Secretary General receives the request. The 4 conciliators shall within 60 days following the date of the last of their own appointments appoint a 5th conciliator chosen from the list who shall be chairman. If the appointment of the chairman or of any of the other conciliators has not been made within the period prescribed above for such appointment, it shall be made by the Secretary General within 60 days following the expiry of that period. The appointment of the chairman may be made by the Secretary General either from the list or from the membership of the International Law Commission. Any of the periods within which appointments must be made may be extended by agreement between the parties to the disputes. Any vacancy shall be filled in the manner prescribed for the initial appointment. 3, conciliation commission shall decide its own procedure. The commission, with the consent of the parties to the dispute, may invite any party to the treaty to submit to it its views orally or in writing. Decisions and recommendations of the commission shall be made by a majority vote of the 5 members. 4, the commission may draw the attention of the parties to the dispute to any measures which might facilitate any amicable settlement. 5, the commission shall hear the parties, examine the claims and objections, and make proposals to the parties with a view to reaching an amicable settlement of the dispute. 6, the commission shall report within 12 months of its constitution. Its report shall be deposited with the Secretary General and transmitted to the parties to the dispute. The report of the commission, including any conclusions stated therein regarding the facts or questions of law, shall not be binding upon the parties, and it shall have no other character than that of recommendations submitted for the consideration of the parties in order to facilitate an amicable settlement of the dispute. 7, the Secretary General shall provide the Commission with such assistance and facilities as it may require. The expenses of the Commission shall be borne by the United Nations. The end. Islam. This is the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. And at this point, I will yield the floor for any comments, statements, questions, or concerns. Islam.
That was a very good read. And I do see the instructions in there as far as exactly how we become a state and how those Negroes who have been helping the colonists has been drawing us away from this information and result in marching, praying, and doing things of that nature as opposed to statehood. But yeah, the information's there, been there since what, 1969 and before.
It's been there. So let me ask everyone on the line. If we knew about these treaties and we knew about these provisions and we knew about these instructions, would we had been marching and praying versus enacting legislation? What do you think that we would have been doing?
Well, the Moors wasn't doing none of that marching and praying stuff. It was just the Negroes that was doing. The Moors back in the 60s and stuff, they were mad at Elijah Muhammad, you know, calling him a dirty Moor, you know. But the Moors, Science Temple wasn't doing any marching and stuff back. It was just the Negroes.
You're right. You're absolutely right about that. But okay, now let me ask you this. Aside from going at Elijah Muhammad, what else did the Moors do?
Nothing. They just what the Moors were doing when I first got into this movement, they weren't doing nothing to uplift the Negroes. One brother was talking about, you know, they're black and we're Moors and fuck them, you know, blah blah blah.
Watch your language, bro.
Yeah, well, you know, so you know, they weren't doing anything to help the Negroes or even themselves to even, you know, come up under international law from what I'm seeing.
Okay, let's talk about this then. I'm gonna tell you what they were doing. Who's in a car making all that noise? All right, let me show you what they were doing. Let's go back to Resolution 75. Because the Moors, you're right, they weren't marching and praying. They were too busy in a different bag, trick bag. What should I put? RB Bay, because I could get it off of RB Bay. Let's examine what they were doing. One of the things that they were doing, right here. What does it say? Let me increase the font. So it says, in the city of Philadelphia, there exists a Moorish American society made up of Moors who have found here the end of their quest for a home, as if we're not already home, and of the children of those who journeyed here from the plains of Morocco, as if this isn't already Morocco. Okay. This society has done much to bring about a thorough absorption by these people of those principles which are necessary to make them good American citizens. These Moorish Americans have since being here missed the use of the titles and name annexation that were so familiar at home and which are used in accordance with the doctrines of the religious faith to which they are Adherents, therefore, therefore be it resolved that this House commends the Moorish American Society of Philadelphia for the efficient service it has rendered the nation in bringing about a speedy and thorough Americanization of these former Moors, who have now become Negroes, blacks, and coloreds. So you're right. You're absolutely right. They weren't marching and praying. They were too busy putting us in a whole nother trick bag to bring forth a speedy and thorough Americanization of these people that were formerly known as Moors. Well, what are they known now? What are they known as today? Negroes, blacks, and coloreds. So the Negroes was doing one thing to put us in a trick bag, and the Moors were doing something else to put us and keep us in another trick bag. Do you understand that, good brother Bean?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You broke that part down about Resolution 75. I don't even know how they even wrote that crap, bro.
Bro, I don't know. And they got away with that. And Moors jumped all over it. So
yeah, I was one of them.
Yeah, so was I. I told you I was a but see, when you are a proud and diehard Moorish American, then you don't mind the speedy and thorough Americanization because you're an American and we think that we're Americans and we think that this is America and it's all good. No, sir. That's the trick bag. This is not America and we're not Americans. This is Morocco and we are Moroccans. So both ends was putting us in a trick bag. The Negroes with their marching and praying, and the Moors with their Moorish American Society of Philadelphia and their Moorish American BS and all the American citizen and U.S. citizen and the U.S. flag. And I'm constantly seeing Moors on Facebook like wrapped around, they got the U.S. banner wrapped around them in pride. Like, I'm an American, and it's so egregious. And they laugh at us for that. Well, laugh at them. They ain't laughing at us no more. I think we done made Nancy Pelosi retire. She was like, oh man, there's too many Moors coming online on some competent stuff. I got to go. I'm probably going to be the first one they come in after. Because keep in mind, Sleepy Joe knows AMPAG, knows New Mecca. They know AMPAG, and they soon to get to know Maru and any other state that comes online. Why? Because that's part of the process. It's called promulgation. We deposited our ratified constitution with the United Nations. But then on top of that, we must promulgate that constitution. And we did that with the United States and the state of whatever. In our case, it's the state of Georgia. New Mecca did it with the state of Oregon. AMPAC did it with the state of Colorado. And so will Nauru do it with the state of Indiana. So the president and the governor, they know that we exist. Why? Because we have promulgated our ratified and deposited constitution. That's why the term is ratified, deposit, and promulgate. Promulgate means you let the world know. But in particular, the United States and the people or the corporation, the fictitious corporation that's operating your territory under your Utupata jurisdiction. That was the process. So my point, what I'm saying about the Moors is the Moors they have no excuse. They worse than the Negro. Because who is supposed to be the lawgivers? Who is supposed to be the law enforcers? Who is supposed to be the Ales and the Bays? The Moors. So if nobody else knew nothing about international law, the Moors should have known about international law. The Prophet told us we was Moroccans. So how the hell y'all don't know about the Moroccan treaties? All these grand governors and grand whatevers, high level positions, titles, sold out. In fact, they're the ones who need to be adjudicated and held accountable before even the Negroes. I yield the floor. I'm getting pissed. Islam.
Islam.
It's ugly. It's ugly what the Moors have done. And they were right about Elijah Muhammad. But okay, what's the solution? Well, Elijah Muhammad was a problem. What was the solution? International law. These treaties, our Moroccan laws. That was the solution. But instead, they're over here aiding the United States in the speedy Americanization of these former Moors who are now Negroes, blacks, and coloreds. Oh my God. How egregious. How egregious. And we just stand on that as if it's our salvation. And it never was. Because what has it changed? Nothing. Made everything worse.
Right. We got led into a burning house.
That's exactly right. By the Moors and by Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King at least was trying to course correct, which is why he got popped. And why did he make an attempt to course correct? Because Malcolm got when he came back from Mecca. Because remember, he came back from Mecca with a whole new name. Now he's El Haj Malik El Shabazz. Where did El from? And then he came back with the spirit of love. Oh no, the white man is no longer the devil. No, when I was in Mecca, we were praying together. I don't understand why the white man in America can't be that way. His whole energy changed. In the spirit of love. And nationhood and talking United Nations language. I'll never forget the interview with the Al-Bayan when he was telling him that he was going to the United Nations and deal with the matters of human rights and not civil rights. Because remember, it was a civil rights movement. Malcolm X said, nah, this ain't about civil rights. It's about human rights. Got rid of him. Got rid of him. And why did they get rid of him? Because he was a Moorish subject who wasn't protected under his state and did not have diplomatic immunities. If he had those things in place, he would still be rocking now, probably. And there wouldn't be no Farrakhan. So Farrakhan replaced Malcolm X. And look what he has done. Million Man March, okay, what did that do? Other than line up your pockets. Million Man March 2, what did that do? Nothing, line up his pockets. Y'all notice he always going in on Jacob, the Jews. He always goes in and he always go in on the Jews. How come they don't strip him of all he got? Because he's in cahoots. He is compromised, period. I yield the floor.
And keep in mind, they all sat on the Council of Foreign Relations. Him, Messi Jesse, and Al Sharpskin, and a few other Negroes sat on the Council of Foreign Relations, which I guess everybody know what the Council of Foreign Relations. That's a private organization, probably that enforces that treaty. The treaty. What's the name of that treaty again? That private treaty. Treaty of Verona. Yeah.
The secret treaty of Verona. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones who probably enforce Treaty of Verona to keep the Moorish subjects intact. But they kicked Farrakhan off for some reason. But I think Messi Jesse and Al Sharpskin still sits on the Council of Foreign Relations.
I know what you're talking about, the Council of Foreign Relations. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, like the Club of Rome and all these other secret organizations. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I think Jesse Jackson was also on the Bilderbergs.
Bilderberg as well, yeah.
Yeah, that's a secret society.
You know, if he's on the Bilderbergs, you know, he's way up there, bro.
Right.
You know.
I mean, yes, he's way up there. Don't he have a whole show on CNN?
I didn't know he had a show.
He got a whole segment for himself on CNN.
And they funded his Rainbow Coalition.
Jesse Jackson, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they say that Al Sharpskin is like maybe a son of Strong Sherman or something like that. I don't know if anybody heard that before.
Strong Thurman, yeah. Strong Thurman, yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
I remember, I've heard that. I don't know how true it is.
Who is that, by the way?
Who's Strom Thurmond?
Islam, yeah.
Strom Thurmond was a senator of Georgia, I believe he was.
No, South Carolina, one of the most racist senators known in our time, you know, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And they say Al Sharpskin is his son.
Yeah, that's who Strom Thurmond is. He was a senator of racist KKK senator of South Carolina. Same like David Duke. David Duke was the head of the KKK, and he was a senator of Alabama or something like that.
Gotcha.
No, it was Louisiana.
Louisiana, yeah.
Yeah.
It's bad, man. All of it was to keep the Moors subjugated as Negroes, Blacks, and Coloreds, African Americans, Moorish Americans, Aboriginal Americans, Indigenous Americans. Oh, that was the push. Come from Africa, Pan-African, Hebrew Israelite, any and everything else. Notice that we know all the other so-called national identities. We can take it all the way back to Kemet. We can take it all the way back to the Olmecs, right? Chi-Olmecs. Chi spelled X-I, right? We know all these identities. Hebrew Israelite, whatever, Pan-African, Black Panther. We know it all. But why is it that no one has ever promulgated the term Moroccan within our so-called Black communities? We've always promulgated everything else. We stood out clear on everything else, but never the term Moroccan. Ever. I've never heard no Black person saying nothing about no damn Morocco or Moroccan. Yeah, you'll hear more. You'll hear the Moorish people, Moorish American. But you don't hear Moroccan. Why? It's by design. That was the
treaty.
Yeah, that's the hidden secret. The Illuminati secret.
So it's the party to the treaties, and the most important party is the Morocco, the Moroccans, the Moors, and they're the only ones that can end that treaty. So they want us to think that we are everything but a Moroccan, a Moor. So we won't identify with that treaty.
Mm-hmm. So they hired all these people, Alex Haley, and whoever else, Yahweh Ben Yahweh, and all these different agent guys to put out information about other identities, to give us something to look forward to. But what it did was cause confusion, because now we got a bunch of people that don't know, that's just going in a whole bunch of different directions. One is going the Hebrew Israelite route. The other one is going the Cherokee route. The other one is going the Pan-African route. The other one is going the Black Panther route. The other one is going in this direction. The other one is an Olmec. The other one is going in the Kemetic side. The other one is American. But nobody is standing in the middle, which is Morocco, except us. That's what they've been fearing the whole time, but they knew it was going to come to pass eventually. Like I said in the previous classes, the clock of destiny is running out on them. Tick, tick, tick. Every tick is their heart racing. Like, man, we're losing this power. Because it's not even a matter about, it's not even so much so about terminating the treaty. It's about killing their finance by taking back the restoration and control of the estate. They want to hold on to the access to the estate because it's a vast estate and the wealth is ridiculous. Like we're like trillionaires. Every Moroccan on this call is at minimum a billionaire, 10 times over, really. And on an ongoing basis, like every month. at worst every year.
Yeah. Beyond our belief.
Beyond our beliefs. Who's
Yeah.
getting it right now? The Pope, the Queen, Jacob. And they want to keep that going. Oh, and don't get it twisted, the brutish, dirty Moors as well.
They're the main ones profiting over there in England right now, and those that are over here too, hiding in secret.
Indeed.
I was wondering why this young kid was on this was a few years ago, why he was on TV saying that the Negroes didn't deserve reparations. I couldn't put my finger on this for some reason, you know. But you know, now I kind of can understand, you know, why he would get up and go against the Moor subjects and say they didn't deserve, or we didn't deserve reparations, you know, himself as well, because you know he didn't fit into that status at the time. That's why I believe.
Well, Negroes don't deserve and can get reparations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Why
at the
would
time.
Negro,
Yeah, at the time, I couldn't understand it why he would go against it, but I realized that he wasn't the same status and stuff. Yeah, Negroes can't get no reparations. I tell him that all the time, but you know, I wouldn't get into a fight. But at that time, I couldn't understand why he would go against the black people at the time, because he wasn't black. You know, he's probably one of the Moor subjects. I'm not Moor subject, British Moors, or come from a British Moors family.
well, I want to take it further. Negroes they can't get it and they don't deserve it. Why am I saying that they don't deserve it though? Because in the status of a Negro, you calling yourself a Negro and standing your square as a Negro, you are not honoring the principles or honoring your foremothers and forefathers.
And
you don't deserve it. Your ancestors weren't Negroes, they weren't black, and they weren't colored, they were Moroccans. So you damn sure don't deserve it.
Also, Negroes do not have a state. Reparations are for states.
Yeah.
Nations. Black people don't have a state. Negroes don't have a state. And African Americans don't have a state. Neither do Moorish Americans.
Neither do Moorish Americans.
Mm-hmm.
No, none of them have a state, and none of them can't get reparations. Joe Biden talking about giving the Indians reparations. If the black people get reparations, the Indians get reparations. That's what he was saying. He was talking about the same people, really.
He was talking about he was talking about the same people. But he knew what he was saying, and he knew
exactly what he was saying. The black people didn't even catch on to it, but I tried to tell them, but you know, they don't listen to me.
Well, the black people are reactive. They got to see it happen before they get on it. They're not gonna, you know, they got to see it happen. That's why it's so important for us to take them to the ICJ and beat the brakes off of them at the ICJ. Win the case and start establishing our economic liberty without any inequality. That's when all the black people are going to suddenly want to wear a fez and call themselves Moroccans because of the economic liberty without any inequality. It's all about the bread with these people, man. They don't necessarily even, most of them don't even really care to know who they really are.
They really don't care. All they want is a dollar in their pocket right now, bro.
That's how beat down and subjugated they are, that they done got to the point where most of them have gotten to the point where, I mean, I don't even care. Well, and also too, though, it has a lot to do with so much confusion that it's like, man, I don't even know what's what, man. I'm just going to continue living my life until something better comes. That's the mindset of a lot of our people too, because there's so much confusion. Everywhere you look around, there's always some new identity that we're representing. And it's all over social media. You would have people with Bay and Ales on their names making posts calling people or calling themselves black and other people black. It's like, what? Come on. You serious right now? And they also love posting all types of sexual stuff. Women dressed a certain way with a Bay and an Ale. I'm like, brother, you're supposed to be uplifting fallen humanity and keeping in mind that humanity is written on the womb of the woman that Prophet Noble Ali was bringing out of the cares of the world, meaning that the woman is humanity. She is the fallen humanity. She has to be raised up. When the mothers are raised up, boy, look at here. They don't even want to deal with a black woman when she get pissed. Imagine a Moroccan sister who knows who she is and she operates competently through legislation. They don't want to deal with her. They don't want to deal with the mother. She is dangerous. She is absolutely dangerous. And in turn, her sons become dangerous. Because when mothers say, let's get to them, the son's gonna be like, let's go. Shaka Zulu's mother and auntie used to draft the war plans for Shaka Zulu to go to go out there and behead people, take heads. And he used to do it gladly, but he didn't write up these war plans. It was the mothers who did it. On a chessboard, who has the most power? Who goes all over the board? Vertical, horizontal, diagonal.
The queen.
And who she stands next to? The king. The king can only move like one step at a time. The queen go all over the place. You don't want it with the mothers. They don't want it with the mothers.
No, they don't.
And they don't want it with the sons either. They don't want it with the sons either. That's why they're trying to flip the roles, make the women men and the men women, and take us out of our element. Because in our proper status, in our proper element, with the men upholding and respecting the mothers, and the mothers also upholding and respecting the men, family units. Huh. How you think Black Wall Street was built? It was men and women upholding one another, raising the children accordingly. And not only that, but if I see your son doing something wrong out there in the streets, I'm gonna whoop his behind and send him home to you. And you're gonna do the same for my son, because it took a village to raise a child, right? We were like a village. We were in unison. We were in unity. So therefore you had Black Wall Street and all these different things popping up all over the country. In the 60s is when it got killed. How did they kill it? Pimp movies. So we went from upholding, protecting, and guarding our women and children to now pimping our sisters, yo. We pimp our women. We just out here pimping our women and shooting at each other through social engineering. The Mac, Rudy Raymore,
Superfly.
And then after that, it was gangster movies. So now we just shooting and killing each other like it's all good and it's all cool.
Right. And now they just putting out tax evasion movies through drug series. And that's like the new wave, on top of them just getting people to kind of adhere to this, like you said, this foreign system or what have you. So it's just more hypothecation right back into the system, and people don't get it.
Islam. It's all been by design. It's all been by design. We don't have respect for the mothers. And the mothers don't have respect for us. We both at each other's necks. We are at war with each other. Yo, man, come on. Every time you look around, you see a post dogging men. And then you also see post dogging women. And it's like, come on, y'all, we got to do better than this.
What also I'm seeing a lot on television is interracial marriages, or, it seemed like 20 years ago, you wouldn't see that. But all of a sudden, you see it all over, mostly melanated sisters with albions. But then again, they do have some of the melanated brothers with the albion female. But majority I see is the female with the male. And that's by design too, because he's trying to give her his seed. and that child becomes what? A melanated child and part of the inheritance.
Exactly, because the inheritance comes through her.
Mhm.
Inheritance. You can even spell it without her in it.
Right.
And you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct about that new push. But I take it even further and even more disgusting. Even more disgusting, because that's already disgusting to a degree. But it's understandable, right? I take it to another level. I'm gonna tell you what else I'm seeing on TV, commercials and stuff. Two men with a baby talking
I don't
about
even
my
watch that
partner and
stuff.
our baby.
Or
I don't even watch that.
No,
Ridiculous.
commercials. I don't watch TV regardless, really.
Yeah.
But in a commercial,
Yeah.
just as simple. Okay, let me ask, brother Amir, you're old enough. Ben, you old enough. A lot of us here are old enough. What do y'all remember a certain promotion back in the 80s and 90s that had everybody doing it, but they stopped? You don't see these commercials anymore. Remember they used to advertise cigarettes?
Yeah.
Hemp.
Yeah.
Alcohol.
They used to advertise cigarette. Every other commercial it was about a damn Marlboro or whatever other brand of cigarettes, right? So they stopped those promotions. Well, that's the same thing they're doing with the homosexual agenda. They're promoting it on TV heavily. So
Yeah.
now what do you see people doing? Engaging in homosexuality. Don't get me wrong. I don't have nothing necessarily against homosexuals. You got, you got regular gay guys, whatever. They're just like men and, whatever floats your boat. We all have the right to self-determination. As long as you don't bring it my way, that's whatever. My brother, he's in his 60s. He's been flaming since he was like 2 years old. The whole family, I wasn't, he's my older brother, so I wasn't there when he was young. But everyone else, I'm the youngest of 9. All my brothers and sisters would tell me about how he used to behave when he was a toddler. So it's almost like, okay, he was probably born this way. It's hard to identify that. Some people agree, others disagree. But in the time of his upbringing, there were no homosexual agenda. So it wasn't a twist in his mind. And there's no history in our family about any molestation. So the only thing else that's left is being born that way, right? As far as he's concerned. So therefore, he can't be more special than everybody else. But my point that I'm making is that's one thing. The other is when you want to change your entire organ. And not only that, but put it on the children, like Dwayne Wade with his child.
And it's a change in the genetics because it's psychological. So now, like you're psychologically changing the genetic that's gone passed down from generation to generation. That goes back into like that generational curse aspect. It's just like, yo, when you got generations that was just fearful, like they really passed down those teachings. They may not be as harsh as those times, because times, through presumption, it seemed like it got easier, but that is psychological. And you see homosexuality between interracials, and it's just like the weirdest shit under the sun. And it's been already like that in commercials where you don't even see like the Moroccan man and woman together. You always see somebody out of place. There's always something out of place. And then they put it in kids' movies, and it's very subtle. And then they want to put it under civil rights and equality and things like that. It's just like, this is not equality. This is insanity.
Right. I also noticed that you very rarely see heavy melanated children on TV. There's always a very light, bright child, more so than not, and they're always with a mixed family. It's ridiculous. They don't want to show a say a Cosby family type situation.
We do it to ourselves. We do it to ourselves, because I remember being younger and they used to be like, oh, you don't want to go outside too much. Oh, you want to get darker. Well, we're sun people. I'm sorry to to let you know. Like, that's why the jail system, like, come on, like, you keeping people inside away from the sunlight. Like, that's a natural resource. Like, what do you mean? And we do it. Like, oh, you don't want to get darker. So that was something that I had to work through being younger. But I'm just like, yo, this is how Allah created me. So why do it matter what I look like? And now when you come into comprehension, you just like, yo, I take this any day. Like, I don't have an allergy under the sun. I kick your ass, but we could drink tea. You get what I'm saying? So it's just like, I take this, and it is the weirdest thing. But then it's also currently a push for darker skin, and it's just like that's just something that's more of a commodity also too. Because like when you talk about interracial marriages and having kids, they're looking at the strength of their genetics. I have a sister who I identify as being Italian, and she's the only child. And her dad told her, like, no, I don't want you to bring home no melanated brother. Like, all of our kids, we've been keeping the bloodline as this. But the reality is she's the last one of the family. So they're just like, yo, find somebody to continue the lineage. But for those that's like a Kim Kardashian or so on and so forth, or what have you, they're just like, yo, we got weak genes. So we're trying to get in on inheritance. We're trying to get in on the strength. And then look at the transition of outdoor sports to indoor things now. Come on.
Here's the reality. The Italians got our blood all up in them. So they might need to stop all that because they got our blood all in them. That's why they so mean.
Yeah, listen, me and her, we like night and day. I'm just like, dang, if I was like, I don't know, like they really do. And I'm in New Jersey or what have you. So I've gotten the comprehension of the really old ones. That's like my grandfather age, like in their 80s. The ones that were cute, not the melanin brothers down in Atlantic City off the top of the building, because they just like, oh, let's take these niggers off. And then the ones that was like really in the field with us, employing us, and we were getting money together. So it's just like I understand both aspects.
Well, here's the real aspect. Again, here's the real aspect. The Sicilian mob. Oh, somebody please, who's got all that beat, that loud? Here's a real aspect. The Sicilian mob will not allow you to become a godfather unless you can trace your lineage to the first Moor who impregnated that blue-eyed, blonde woman that was in the harems. That's how deep it is. So to turn around then and talk that crap, I think what they're really saying is Negroes that they don't want part of the family, because I can assure you Moroccans in affairs that are in their noble status, in their proper status of a Moroccan government, he is going to tell his daughter, you might want to get with one of those.
Yeah,
those are the ones that we recognize. They don't recognize moolies. Who are moolies? Negroes, blacks, and colors. That's why they treat us the way they treat us. That's why they talk to us the way they talk to us, because they know who we are. We don't know who we are, and we don't operate as we should. So it's a loss of respect across the board for us. Period. They know who we are, and they know who we're not. And when they know we're not no Negro, blacks, and colors, but we run around propagating that. We run around standing out square on Negro, blacks, and colors and gang banging and pants off your ass. And excuse my language, by the way, this is a PG-13 session, so no cussing is really allowed. Indeed, but I get frustrated because that's what it is. We are doing it to ourselves. We are the slaves. We are the masters. Like Michael Jackson said, the man in the mirror. Look in the mirror. It's I, self, law, am master. It's about you. We have to rise up as individuals. That's the individual aspect of it. But once we rise up, once we raise our degrees of our identity, we come together and establish our states. That's where the camaraderie come in. That's where the unity come in. You won't even have unity if you don't even know who you are. That's why we don't have unity. And it doesn't help that they keep using this social programming on us, whether it be through TV, social media, magazines, movies, whatever. It's all social engineering. Again, I took you back to the pimp movies that got us pimping our women, man. We was let me tell y'all something. Let me tell y'all a brief story. We was at some of us went to the Stone Mountain to have like what you would say a retreat with our Nabi and his wife and his son, and his son brought one of his friends, young brothers. They on it. It was a proud thing to see these young brothers being on it like that. He answered what was our provocation in this cheat. He answered it straight up. I was like, wow, he's been watching the videos. So I noticed something by the Nabi. It's a heavy walk. It's not an easy walk up the mountain. His consort was having problems with that walk. The brother was treating her delicately. The brother was treating her like a queen, thanking her and appreciating her for making it as far as she was able to make it, which was like halfway through. And that was a hell of a walk. Me and Story and the Nabi, we did it barefooted. And I know he didn't notice that I noticed, but I noticed. And it stuck with me. I was like, man, wow, that's not usual. Man, this brother was praising her for reaching the level that she was able to reach and thanking her for getting that far. And she herself was strong enough to at least try to make it as far as she possibly could. And then she stayed behind because she couldn't make it any further. Now it was starting to get steeper and steeper. Stayed back, and the son stayed back, doing what the father would do. So the son is now following the steps of the father on how you treat a woman, on how you treat your matriarchs, the melanated Moroccan sister. And I really noticed that. It touched me. I thought it was awesome as hell. And he's a perfect example to be a national. That whole family actually is a perfect example to be nationals in our state, because they're showing something that others need to see. Keeping in mind that the Nabi is the minister of spiritual science, education, and spiritual sciences. So that's why he's the Nabi, because he teaches, he understands the spiritual principles of things, energies, meditation, chakra work, etc. So I just wanted to make that point clear. We're not far from being the best that we can be, and he was a perfect example of that. I'm not sure if they're even online. In fact, yeah, they are online. Islam, Nabi,
Islam, brother, Islam. Islam, brother, Islam, sisters,
Islam, brother, yeah.
Sisters, Islam Moroccans, how y'all doing? All right.
Kudos and credit and honors to you for that, brother.
Shukran, brother, shukran.
Islam, brother, Islam. That was beautiful. So, and I just wanted to put that out there on the floor. I noticed that it touched me. I don't know if you noticed that I noticed, but trust me, I notice everything. I'm quite nosy. I notice everything.
Yeah, Islam, brother E2 and sister Shira as well. They as well watching the Moroccan couple. Exactly. that connection, that unison, that God, that not knowing each, not some of us just meeting each other for the first time and helping each other, and there's an awesome connection. It was a beautiful exercise. I would love to catch the next banquet that you guys have. Sorry the family missed that.
Oh, Islam, it's all good, brother. You made the stone mountain walk. So we'll have another one, and you'll be everyone is invited, and hopefully you'll make it then. But I just wanted to give you your flowers and honor you. And you're right, brother too, and sister Shira. That it was a beautiful display of a man who upholds the divinity of the matriarch, and it was just a beautiful thing to see. Our brother too was stuck to her side the whole way up the mountain, because even she was struggling, but she happened to make it. We all are in our various stages of advancement, even in our physical capacities, and it was just a beautiful thing to see. And then the way you had those young brothers, they were sharp, man. Your son is sharp. His friend was sharp. It was just a beautiful thing to experience, and that just shows me that we're not far from it. In fact, we're coming to it. Everything comes back around. And we will come back around to the point where we will start honoring our sisters, and our sisters will start honoring us. We will find the unity. And when that happens, the world will fall to our feet, will fall at our feet without a doubt. That's what's missing in the world.
Islam.
Is our example. Islam. So with that said, young brothers and sisters, mothers and divine mothers and divine sons, we'll close out. This was an excellent build. I appreciate Sister Jana Musa Bay for showing up, and all your people. There's other people on here. I'm not sure who they are, but I'm assuming that you brought them along, sister. We appreciate that. And everyone else who was online on the call, and anyone at home who's watching, who's learning and being entertained by these classes. I'm not sure what the next class will be in terms of Sundays. So on Sundays we have treaty classes, and on Wednesdays we have open forum discussions. We'll pick out a topic, we'll go over it, and then we'll talk about it on Wednesdays. But on Sundays we'll have specific treaty classes. So not sure what Wednesday is going to bring, and I'm certainly not sure what Sunday is going to bring, but it will come and we will be there. We will be in the house. I'll come up with something else to talk about. So in the meantime, mothers and sons, y'all have a wonderful night. I enjoyed the build. Thank you all for showing up. Gratitude. As a good brother say, shukran. You know what I mean? So may the blessings of Allah be upon you all. Peace, love, and light. Islam.
Islam, peace.
Islam.
Islam.
Peace,
Islam.
Islam.
Peace and love.
Peace.
Peace, Morris.
Islam. Peace, Moroccan.
Islam.
Love and harmony.
Peace, love, and harmony. Islam.